All right, they're good on the inside. We'll go ahead and kick this thing off. Everybody ready?
Yes, sir.
All righty. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Board of Commissioners work session this April 28th, 2026. First off is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any amendments or adjustments to the agenda this evening? Hearing none then, can I get a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, this motion carries. The agenda is now adopted. All righty, so we got first order of business would be consideration for the approval of the agreement with Pulte Homes. Was there a presentation we wanted to do with this? Kind of describe some of the situation and a little of the backstory? We do have a presentation here.
Yeah, I'll call Kevin up to do that, and we have a representative from Pulte here, so I'll make room here.
Okay, thank you. I think everyone here is relatively familiar with this so far. We've had several meetings back and forth trying to figure out what to do with the certificates of occupancy at the preserve at Forest Creek. A little background just for everybody on that. This was approved several years ago. At the time, there was no COs to be issued until all improvements were done, including the intersection of Rehoboth and 75, which included a switch station, switch box for the mast arms there, crossing arms that CSX wanted. There was 25 COs granted as a minor change to the plan. About a couple years after that, we did meet and we authorized that those 25 COs. Pulte is requesting additional COs so they can actually get started on some of the houses there. But the town we got concerns about delays by third parties that are involved in this. And really, so we're just trying to find a way, something that will work for everybody on this. Where we got some assurities that the traffic issues will be mitigated properly, and so that Pulte also has some sureties that they get some COs that they can do as well. So right now, really, the agreement that we've worked out through quite a good bit of back and forth, so there will be no initial COs until September 1st of 2026. And then in September, if there are conditions that are met by September of 2026, they would have 3 COs per month for a maximum of 3 months. Those conditions are that Pulte provides written confirmation the town is secured and will maintain a private contract for a qualified off-duty law enforcement officer to perform in-person traffic control at the intersection. That would be during peak hours, Monday through Friday. Also, Pulte will provide the town with a bond in the amount of $2 million for the cost of the intersection improvements and/or any alternative improvements to achieve mitigation. Pulte will provide the town with a written monthly update on the status of the traffic signal installation, including any and all correspondence with CSX, NCDOT, and Kimley Horn. And Pulte also will provide the town attorney a draft copy of the tri-party agreement being prepared for execution among Pulte, CSX, and NCDOT. So that would be a 3-month period with three COs allowed. After that point, there is another condition which would require that Pulte get the 3-party agreement signed and back to the town, at which point they would have 9 months with 3 COs. So that's a total of 36 COs over a 12-month period. Then, if everything is done within that 12-month period or before that 12-month period, if all the work is done out there, then effectively they will have taken care of all of their obligations and they can proceed just as a regular development would. No more officers are needed out there at the time. The bond can be closed out. And they can proceed as normal. If after that 12-month period that hasn't been completed, then the town shall have the right to either consider Pulte's progress towards completion and amend the terms of this agreement, or to continue with the phased release of three COs per month, or for an otherwise agreed upon additional period until the traffic signal installation is completed. Or the town can grant the COs as requested and as warranted by the town's standard residential development process, call the bond, and basically take over completing those improvements itself with CSX and NCDOT. So the town does have some options at the end of that 12-month period as well. Dan Rossi from Pulte is also here tonight. We've been working on this quite a bit. You guys have any questions of me or of Dan?
Any questions from the board?
Comment?
Comment, please?
The way I look at this is Rehoboth and NC are critical intersection, key for internal circulation for Waxhaw families. A traffic signal is still required. That is nothing's changing there. This agreement makes sure that that traffic signal, that key infrastructure in partnership with the CSX gating that would synchronize everything would be in place. This agreement essentially puts those pieces concretely in place, that there are clear objectives and a clear timeline. This is not essentially new growth. This is not unchecked growth. This is essentially a partnership to accomplish critical infrastructure at a key intersection that is essentially, in my mind, failing every day. And so the way I look at it is this is reasonable. It puts good controls, off-duty officer at that intersection during peak hours. Specifically, I know we've discussed, and I wanted to make sure that it's highlighted, that we're mindful of school hours and how much traffic essentially accumulates at those intersections getting to and from school and other parts of our town, because our town is essentially split in half by that, essentially that key intersection and those key infrastructure pieces. And so for me, this is reasonable in a partnership to make sure that those key safety improvements get sequenced in partnership with everybody. As a multilateral agency, that complex, it's NCDOT, it's CSX, and we as a town are essentially just operational controllers, essentially helping in the logistics and implementation of it, in my mind.
Yeah, this is an intersection that I've heard residents ask about quite a lot, and for just giving a very small number of COs ahead of time, we get the traffic mitigation ahead of time as well. Not the full traffic mitigation, but something, an interim measure until the full traffic mitigation can be installed. And it's been complicated because of CSX. But
Multi-agencies, it's tough when you're sequencing multi-agencies to implement something.
right.
Yeah. Coordinating timelines with one agency is hard enough, but to put three major agencies together to come to agreement and timelines and getting the right people where they need to be is difficult. So I am comfortable with this. I know that the public has been very concerned about that light. They've been waiting for that light. They were told there would be no COs before that light, and
Past administrations made decisions.
And that's normally what we would do, but having the traffic mitigation, having the officer there, helping control that intersection in the meantime was the best option, considering other options floated were closing the crossing, which we could not do. That would close us off. If we had Helms Road extension up and going, then that would have been maybe an option, but there were a lot of concerns on how to get this done as efficiently as we could and being reasonable. So I think Pulte has done what they can do thus far. I just wanted to make sure, so the officer is starting September 1st?
The officer will need to be in place before any COs are issued. So
Okay.
that additional traffic that's coming can be, they can
Right,
encompass it
okay.
from that.
And then as we were drafting this, we talked about a few key milestones that were coming up. And if I recall from my notes, it was the design, then we were going to purchase equipment, or at least get the proposal for the purchase of equipment. Have we moved through those milestones? I knew 2 of them were done already, and there was another one due here in April. Do you remember which one that was? I think that was final design, right?
Yeah, and I'll let Mr. Rossi answer that. You want to address that?
Yeah, good evening. So I'm told that.
If you don't mind, sorry to interrupt, a little closer to the microphone
Yeah,
so
sure.
that folks
Yeah,
can hear.
I'm told that the final design has been done. So I checked in with CSX last week, and their representative told me I do not have a copy of it. I'm trying to get a copy. I know the town wanted to see it, but
Okay.
that's what I've been told.
And that says a lot, and I want to say thank you for confirming that, because one of the big concerns is that even though Pulte's willing to engage in the bond, it's still a concern that the town would have to then manage this project, which could be very complicated. But to know that these milestones that we talked about all the way back in January, to know these milestones are actually hitting and getting done is very encouraging, so thank you.
One of the milestones that I know we discussed that I hope, Kevin, if you don't mind, I know there was a question mark about timing of equipment, and that essentially that was key, that synchronization of equipment and the RFP out for that equipment purchase and the acquisition timeline. Do we have any clarity at this time about that acquisition timeline of that equipment?
I can't answer that, but I will say that item C in here, I think was effectively supposed to cover all of that, where we would get those updates and we could forward on to y'all that, okay, we've got engineering done, we've got estimates done, we've got the equipment in place. Do you want to answer anything to that? You're not at the point where you purchased anything yet, right?
Yeah, I'll just add some clarity. So the final design, which has been done, spurs the next step, which is the cost estimate that CSX does. Once the cost estimate's done, that'll populate the tri-party agreement between NCDOT, CSX, and Pulte Homes. Pulte Homes will have to fund at 150% the tri-party agreement. CSX, once that tri-party agreement's funded, CSX will do the purchasing of the equipment. So
Got it.
Pulte doesn't do any equipment purchasing, installation. We or DOT can't do anything within the right of way.
So not just you all, it would be us too if it was the town implementing the bond. We would be looking at the same set of hurdles and challenges. This is an equipment timeline and synchronization essentially set by CSX.
Correct.
Thank you.
Well, just in closing, I just want to say thank you to Pulte Homes for working with the town and acting as a good faith partner. I think you've done a great job in sort of working with the board and developing some solid conditions that I think will make the town a little bit happier with that particular intersection. So
Yeah, we
thank you.
appreciate all your help.
Thank you.
And then
Thank you for your
I'll also say
partnership.
thank you to the board. You guys provided a lot of input and some feedback in developing these conditions. And the fact that Pulte's willing to abide by these conditions, it's a good sign, so.
Well,
good
thank you to
partner.
you also, because actually you were the one who came up with the idea of the officer at the intersection.
Yep.
Exactly.
So-
And
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I appreciate Pulte's willingness to do that, and I think that'll make a big difference and go a long way in getting people kind of ready for the traffic light, hopefully.
Right.
So, thank you.
Just on a personal cause, yeah, I know that there's time still, but I know that intersection every day. I've been traveling it more, and I am sure everybody that's listening also is probably feeling the pain about that intersection, especially during travel time for families. So if there's anything that can be done, the sooner the officer can be out on the corner, much appreciated. Thank you again for the support.
Yeah, I live right down the road. I go there every day too, so I feel it.
Then you feel our pain.
I go through it twice a day also.
No, thank you.
All righty. Anything else on this item then?
Well, it might be helpful to the public to know a little about the history of this.
Sure.
Because when this development was first approved, this traffic light was the condition was for it to be completely built before any additional COs were issued. But I believe it was in 2024 that employee of the town represented the town and made an agreement to add some more, which overrode the board decision and then left the town. So that's why things haven't really panned out as folks expected.
All right.
So we need-
So let's see here. Can I get a motion to approve the conditions agreed upon with Pulte Homes and to authorize the town manager in consultation with the town attorney and the planning staff to finalize and execute the agreement in accordance with the terms discussed in the closed sessions?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, this motion carries. Thanks again, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, let me get my copy here.
You're up for next.
Okay.
Alrighty, next up, we have a text amendment. Now, this wasn't in the agenda review, was it? Or am I going crazy?
I believe we added it on
Okay.
after planning board.
Yeah, after planning board, it was added to that. It was not in the review because the planning board was meeting that same night to
Okay.
go over this.
And we're not looking for any kind of motion on this tonight. This is merely a presentation to y'all, so you know what's coming. At the next meeting, we'll do a public hearing, and if you want to vote at that point, we can. This is, I think I've mentioned, that we've got kind of a long list of various text amendments, and we're trying to kind of take them in little chunks and bring them forward to y'all. The next one we're going to be working on after this deals with open space and trees, and there's a whole lot of different things going on with that. So these aren't entirely tied together. We're just trying to find a good way to kind of bring them, so we're not coming back in every single month for doing every few months, bring a few more to you. This is petition TA 02-2026. It is a staff recommended or staff initiated position, and it is to amend various sections of chapters 4, 5, 7, and 13 of the LDC by updating various sections related to minor subdivisions, private streets, and lot coverage. Changes are being recommended as part of a larger collection of amendments, as I mentioned earlier. And I'm not used to presenting off of a page. No, it's okay.
Old-fashioned.
So bear with me.
Oh, no, that's for the capital improvement plan. Okay.
I'll start with minor subdivisions. I think most of y'all are probably aware of some of this, but state law has specific criteria for exempt subdivisions, but also permits towns to distinguish between minor subdivisions and major subdivisions of land. The intent's really to allow for property owners to create smaller subdivisions that don't require major increases in infrastructure or adoption by the board. It's just in general a much faster process for staff and for property owners. And staff has identified some loopholes in the current LDC, which permits minor subdivisions utilizing private streets to be platted and lots sold without design or provision for infrastructure. I commonly refer to these as paper streets or paper lots, so you'll know what I'm talking about if I say it. Got a picture on the next page here. The picture on the left would be a kind of a new minor subdivision with existing infrastructure. It's on a street. It has sewer and water and everything available on that lot, and they just want to cut it into 4. We allow up to 9, I believe. And on the 10th one, I believe it becomes a major subdivision either way. On the right would be an example of a very old subdivision, which is basically got paper streets and paper lots. They subdivided everything and never installed the infrastructure, which we've got a process for now. We bond everything out. We go through engineering on everything, and we also don't sell. We don't. They can sell lots, but we don't issue COs until everything is finalized. So that's really what we're trying to avoid. Once you get this, you end up with a very, very messy process for developing this and having any kind of consistent infrastructure installed. If you buy a lot and you think you can build on it, and all of a sudden you have to build part of a street, part of your sidewalks, extend sewer, and basically do all the development for yourself, then your lot just got probably more expensive than it's worth to build on, so we really want to avoid doing this. Our definition largely covered this. Really, it's just trying to clarify it and close some loopholes. So the changes there, again, it still allows 9 lots. The sentences here are really kind of the meat of it. The minor subdivisions do not require the dedication of public right-of-way or the installation or extension of public or private infrastructure and or shared amenities for the purpose of providing required access or service to the lots. This shall include public and private streets required for access, water and sewer lines, except for private taps, dedicated open space and shared amenities, public easements or land to be deeded to the town or other agencies, shared stormwater drainage and detention features, and other improvements the zoning administrator or town engineer deem as requiring detailed plans and further review. So that's it in a nutshell. But really, if you're going to be developing land, it needs to be planned out, and you need to provide for the infrastructure to actually be installed there before you go through the process of subdividing and recording those lots.
So for a minor subdivision like this, a sidewalk continuation or addition would not be mandated?
Well, no, I mean, I think we would. I mean, that's a good question. That's something we do intend to address later on, actually. There are some loopholes when it comes to that as well. Typically, they require new development, but not necessarily when you have just a lot or two.
Yeah.
We do want to take a look at that. I wasn't going to address it with this round, though, but it will be coming up.
Okay. So it's kind of in planning. Right now.
I think we've got 16 or 17 different sections that we've just kind of been paying attention to since I got here and that we're going to be bringing to y'all.
Sounds good.
The next item is somewhat related, private streets. So they do have a place every now and then. They can work, but they can also make things very, very messy, depending on how they're done. And so really we wanted to try to address that. We didn't have a good definition for private streets or when they could be utilized. In the ordinance, it was alluded to, but it wasn't very clear. So this is to help provide some clarity to that. We wanted to provide limited use of private streets where appropriate, which will reduce any potential long-term costs to the town in the future and minimize conflict between property owners. To ensure that private streets, when allowed, are designed in accordance with town standards to ensure consistency across the town and continued access and safety. And to prevent the widespread use of private streets, which can cause long-term issues with maintenance, ability to develop properties, and continued access to both property owners and public safety and services. And this picture is kind of putting the cart before the horse a little bit, but in effect, what we're trying to do here is to show some differences there. Right now, you can do private alleys or drives. We don't really regulate those. If you're on a major street, the private alley back there, we really don't. That's kind of however you want to do it. We do allow for some small sections of private street already, and this ordinance would help to, ordinance amendment would help to kind of codify that. But it's not a major through street. It doesn't connect to larger tracks that are going to be developed in the future, anything like that, where you could end up running into issues with access and maintenance and ownership of the street. Can't see it very well, but the one on the top right is actually a commercial subdivision we have that was done as a minor and has private street. Yeah, I could probably use them.
Need your cheaters.
Right. And then we have another example of a subdivision here, which has all public streets, but where those in the red would be ones that we would not recommend to be private. Those that are in the green, very limited access. They're not very long streets. Those could be private. Probably not a major issue with those. And that's really what the text here specifies. Private streets. This is a new section. They are permitted on a limited basis when the following conditions can be met. They do not provide primary access to any lots or larger parcels they border, except those listed in section 5.13, which would be primarily commercial development, and then we allow some with townhomes and cottages. For those listed in section 5.3, they shall provide direct access to a limited number of lots or smaller parcels in a development and are short in overall length, typically of a standard block length or less. Private streets shall not serve as collectors or through streets and are not intended to be the sole connection to or from future development on neighboring tracts or subdivisions, which could hinder development or access to said properties. When providing primary access to lots and or parcels, private streets shall be designed and constructed in accordance with the design standards for public streets set forth in this code in the engineering manual. So really, you shouldn't notice a difference between the quality of the street from a private street to a public street. We're not going to go from having a paved 26-foot wide street to a gravel 15-foot wide drive on private if it's something that is required for access to those lots. The zoning administrator and town engineer may agree to permit exemptions to this section in the case of non-conforming lots and other rare circumstances when it's deemed that private streets would serve a lot or lots better than public streets and when the general intent of this code is met. The last item I have on here is lot coverage and conservation subdivisions. And the way the ordinance is set up right now, in conservation subdivisions, there is an exemption or an exception, I should say, that allows for a higher percentage of lot coverage, which would be your impervious surface, your driveways, your house, patios, sheds, all of those things that cover the land. R3 right now allows for an exception. R1 and R2 do not, and it was the intent that they did, but they did not make it in there. We wanted to go ahead and we looked at it and we thought it might actually be better to take a different, rather than just doing a static percentage, to try something a little bit different with it that might help keep it more in line. So in these subdivisions, when you get the smaller lots, standard lot coverages may not be sufficient for all aspects of single-family living on smaller lots permitted by right in conservation subdivisions. A proportional increase in percentage of lot coverage provides more flexible buildable areas as lots get smaller, while still providing a large reduction in overall impervious surface in a subdivision. An across-the-board increase could potentially allow for more surface area in medium-sized lots, and I'll try to follow up on that in a second. R3 proposed to be slightly modified, but overall there's not much change to that, and we're not proposing any change to R4. On your diagrams here, I put these in because I wanted to help everybody to visualize everything. These are two 5-acre lots that are zoned R1. Right now in R1, you can have a 100 by 200 foot lot, and you've got a lot of space left over for infrastructure, open space, etc. When you go to a conservation, you can have a much smaller lot, but you have a really large area open for conservation. So that's really what you see here. These are it's the same overall density, you just have more open space. That's really what the conservation subdivision does.
Do we have minimum lot sizes spelled out in the conservation subdivision
We do.
LDC?
Yeah, we do. And they're right here.
On the next page?
They're right here, yeah. And I know this is a little bit confusing, but this is the very minimum you could do there, which is a very small lot. I don't think many people would do that size of a lot. But just to be practical, I think if we have it in our ordinance that you can have lots that small, that we ought to try to make them actually be usable and livable space. The gray area that's on these right now are additional areas of lot coverage. In R1, that's 40%, so you can see you've got the house, the driveway, you've got a whole area around it where you could actually add the typical things a homeowner might have. Down below that, on a conservation lot, you probably barely got room for one car, maybe a tiny little patio, not much else. The house is actually substantially smaller as well, just because you have to meet those minimums. Those maximums, I should say. So this is what we have in the code right now. I'll jump ahead here in a minute. what we proposed was very minimal change to the actual code here. We added in section 9 and cited that for conservation subdivisions. So where we had a lot coverage there of 50% for some of these before, now we've got a little asterisk there so you can, to go and have a look. We get the same thing in the lot coverage, the dimensional requirement tables. And then section 5.9, this allows for two exceptions, and that being that maximum lot coverage in conservation subdivisions in R1 and R2 districts may be increased by 1% per each 1,000 square foot reduction in lot size from the minimum standard lot size. Increases in lot coverage shall be applied to each lot individually. R3 is the same. It had a little wider range there. In order to keep it consistent, we made that 2% per 1,000 square feet. And really, again, this is just an example. This would just allow, this is the minimum conservation lot size in R1 right now and R2. And that's just kind of an example. It would just open up. It's not really a lot more. It just allows for more usable area there on the lot to where you could actually probably have most of the things that you would want to see in a single family lot. The table here explains this. If you look in the red here on the fourth column, this is what I was trying to show you with the static, the 40% lot coverage in R1 right now. Okay, you get 8,000 in a 20,000 square foot lot. If you allow a static 50%, which is what the ordinance did before, those first few lots, so you're actually going to end up with a much higher number on a smaller lot. You'll go to 9,600 square feet on a 19,000 square foot lot, which is why we felt doing a proportional reduction was a little bit better. Kind of more keeping with the conservation subdivision as well. This is not going to be in the ordinance. This is just to show you how it would work.
How it maths.
Yeah, the maximum you would get would be you'd go from 40 to 56% in R1, from 50 to 64% in R2, and then in R3, which was 75% across the board, now it would be a maximum of 76%. Can be a little bit confusing.
How did that lot coverage?
Did everybody get it?
How did that lot coverage table work out for R4? I see 1 through 3.
R4, we did not, had that in my notes here. We didn't suggest a change to R4.
Yeah.
R4 already allows for complete, almost complete build out. It's like 75–80%. And then on top of that, it allows for townhomes and for duplexes and a bunch of other things. So it just didn't really seem like it was already kind of there. We didn't really think we needed to add anything to it.
And
There's not much to gain there. If you look at the
no, there's not. And then I was just wondering.
I was
just wondering if it's too much in R4 already at 80%.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, it was 75. It's 75 is the same for R3 and for R4, but R4 you get a smaller lot size and 75%. So it's
okay.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of room for anything else.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll actually get many homes trying to go onto a lot that size. I think really once you get to that density, you're looking at townhomes and
duplexes,
cottages and duplexes and stuff like that. So for that reason, we didn't suggest changing that one.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So on April 21st, Planning Board heard and recommended for approval by a 5-0 vote, and we'll try to get this to you guys for a public hearing at the upcoming meeting on the 12th of May.
Yes.
But are there any other questions about this in the meantime?
Well, I'll need remediation at some point
I
because this was a
understand.
lot.
I know, I understand. That's why I didn't want to bring
Yeah.
a whole bunch more to y'all at once.
Yeah, it's a lot. I do have some questions. I'm just going to try to write them down and I'll get them to you. Maybe we can meet. But I mean, for the minor subdivisions and the paper roads, is there something that's come up that warranted this, that was a red flag that brought this up, or, because
Yeah.
it's been around, so I'm just curious if
Yeah,
something
we
came
have,
up.
it's not something that's happening a whole lot. I have seen it happen in other towns. We do have one subdivision here that has caused us a fair bit of grief in trying to figure out a way. It's a commercial subdivision that sits out there that has lots that are saleable at this time, but there's no infrastructure there. And so trying to go work backwards on the development of it with them is very difficult. And it kind of came about because of loopholes in here. The private streets, there really wasn't a good definition or parameters for those at the time, so we felt it was good to go ahead and put those in at that time as well.
I'll probably have more questions as I process it.
I understand.
With the conservation subdivisions,
Yeah.
that's where I'd like more clarity, but I'm not.
Okay.
It definitely, it puts a lot on a little bit of space in that conservation subdivision. And that was one of our concerns back at the planning board when we first brought it up is we loved the intent on how much it was meant to set aside. But at the same time, too, we were looking at, okay, how much are you really putting in for dwelling lot sizes, residential homes, infrastructure for the homes, then surrounding infrastructure? What was that? There was always a question of what is the balancing point between getting that small versus essentially what was been traditional that we've seen already take place and has been established across Waxhaw and Waxhaw families are used to.
Sure. And I wouldn't disagree with you, especially in R1. I mean, that's a pretty small lot to allow in R1. We're more thinking it's there. We can't really change it right now. But how do we make it so it's something that would actually be usable if somebody was going to do it, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think we'll see a ton at 4,000 square feet, but I mean, you could probably see some 6,000, 7,000 square foot lots, which are still small, but not tiny like that, but where they could still probably need a little bit of extra lot coverage there to get that second car, or get a new deck or something like that there. Make the lots more
Family oriented.
more usable in the long run. Exactly.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the intent, when I recall hearing it, the intent at the time was essentially, well, what's the transition for a lot of folks? And looking at essentially the timetables of life and what home ownership looks like. And they were like, well, they're trying to offer a different product, but I thought that product, and we talked about that, was skewed towards too much of a single possible buying group and did not address essentially what the market as a whole could be for that type of opportunity when thinking about a conservation subdivision. When I think of it, and this is me, just a little bit of drawing on what I recall, I think a little bit of kind of like a smaller town. It's a micro. It's kind of like that English cottage setting, smaller, ex-urban, but yet the suburban just kind of tucked in more neatly, leaving those spaces for greenery, tree preservation, floodplain preservation, wildland preservation, leaving that opportunity available.
Yeah, absolutely.
But not so much essentially packing that much in on that small of lots.
It gives them more low density.
Oh, definitely.
Well, I
Right.
mean, what was that gentleman's name that came here? That did the conservation subdivision?
Randall Arendt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was great. He did give us a conservation subdivision locally that I did go visit. And they were larger homes. They weren't really like
Right.
these little stamp,
Right.
like postage stamps.
Right.
They were larger scaled homes. Is that the lot size so small because of I guess, the way our zoning looks here? Because, I don't remember where that
Yeah,
was.
so-
It's not far from here.
Yeah, so I mean, the trade-off is the conserved space, basically.
Right, well, I'm saying they
Right.
had a ton of conserved space.
Right, yeah.
But the houses
Yeah.
were not 2x4s.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So
Right.
I just,
Every subdivision is going to be a little bit different in its
topography.
Correct.
Floodplain, stuff like that, that they're trying to avoid. Or, they get more homes in their plot because of limiting factors of the topography or
Or the goals of preservation. I remember in that exercise, do you want to preserve the creek area and the trees and build in essentially what was,
well, also to
or the opposite in the
hide
meadows.
the houses
And hide
from traffic.
Right.
Number one, for aesthetics for the town in general, but also for the people that live there. They can tuck their homes away and not have maybe light pollution coming in from a boulevard or whatever.
greater setback
So,
appeal
yeah,
on
so
the frontages?
Yeah.
There's benefits for both the city, excuse me, and the homeowners of that subdivision. But I think in every case, somebody's going to have, a developer's going to have a different reason for proposing it. I know right on the back side towards the southeast side of Millbridge, there's a tiny little 4.5 acre plot of land that a developer is going to be putting 13 homes on. It's weird because it was either trapezoid shape or triangle shape, where the real narrow corners were not conducive to putting homes in that area. So he said, well, with conservation, I can make those the green spaces. It was pretty smart.
Yeah.
And, stuff like that can benefit the homeowner and the developer, because I think those homes being smaller lot sizes, they may not be as expensive as someone who gets a full, a quarter acre or something like that.
Well, if I recall that 13 acres too, that wooded area of preservation ended up also serving as a greater setback than what our setbacks, if I recall correctly, would have been required.
And the drop off to one side. And all
exactly.
that
So we got to
kept him
keep the
from
hardwoods,
putting
got to
homes
keep
down
the mature trees in those instances. So it's worthwhile keeping and exploring, figuring out how to utilize that in our toolbox. I just think, and I encourage us to take a second look at if we can, when we can,
Well,
how tight and packed we want to actually make that
Sure.
product.
Yeah, and I mean, the setbacks and everything are still going to be there. The setbacks aren't being reduced as part of this or anything like that, so they're still going to be there.
But those lot dimensions are much smaller.
They are, and I don't think you're going to see anything quite this small. I will say that there is a growing, the 55 and up homes and stuff like that. They want everything on one story, and that also complicates things as well, because when you can go vertical, you can very easily get a 2,500 square foot house on a very, smaller spot. But if everything's one story and then you got a driveway and everything, you can also kind of blow those numbers out pretty quick too. So just something to think about.
Yeah. 3-story townhouse on that lot. Yeah, the house, square footage wise sounds great, but you've got 3 flights of stairs, and so really, who is your market at that point? Right. Is it the 55 and up, or is it a different generation?
Right, and I think that's, really just what this was, why the exemption was there to begin with, was smaller lots, give them flexibility so they can still achieve the type of house that they want there, but, overall it's a better development. That's important.
At the end of the day, it's maintaining more open space. So
Yeah, that too.
that's what it's all about.
Well, thank you for your work on this and walking us through it.
Absolutely. And if you have any other questions or anything you want to send them to Scott, and I will try to get answers for you.
Okay.
Much appreciated.
Thank you. And so this will be a public hearing at our next meeting, and then vote on it the meeting after that. All righty. Next
Mayor,
up-
I need for the board to make a motion to set that public hearing for May the
Yes,
12th.
That's right. Can I get a motion to set a public hearing for the text amendment TA 02-2026 for May 12th, 2026 at 6:30 PM at the Town Hall Board Chambers located at 4218 Waxhaw Marvin Road, Waxhaw, North Carolina?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All righty. Next up, we have the Memorandum of Understanding for the Waxhaw, Downtown Waxhaw Association. How long?
No, I'll get it out.
I saw you go. Thank you.
Good evening, Laura.
Good to see everyone. So tonight we're talking about the Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, between the Town of Waxhaw and Downtown Waxhaw Association is up for renewal. It was signed 3 years ago. So just kind of wanted to, I'm going to start with a brief overview of the Downtown Waxhaw Association and then kind of get into the Memorandum of Understanding and talk about, for discussion and any feedback that you may have. So quickly, the Downtown Waxhaw Association, the DWA, was established in 2022 to expand and strengthen our Main Street program. So it just really allows us to support downtown in a more flexible and collaborative way. Excuse me. It is a 501c3 nonprofit that works in partnership with the town to support small businesses, preserve our historic character, and drive economic activity. This structure just really helps share the responsibility of managing and strengthening downtown. It brings in private investment, volunteer capacity, and community involvement in a way that local government alone just cannot. So as we know, downtown is the economic and cultural center of Waxhaw. So a strong downtown supports small businesses, drives investment, and creates a place where people want to gather and spend time. So the DWA allows us to do that work more effectively by combining town leadership and community ownership. So the organization is led by an 11-member board that includes town leadership and community stakeholders. So this ensures both accountability and representation. And my role serves as the connection point between the town and the nonprofit, which helps keep effort aligned and coordinated. So again, tonight's goal is just to review the MOU that outlines how this partnership works. It defines roles, responsibilities, and just how we collaborate to support downtown. So, all right, so at the top we have our purpose section. So this section just outlines both that the town and DWA are working together to promote downtown, support economic development, and act in good faith towards shared goals. And it's up to you guys. I don't know if we want to go section by section, and if you have questions, I can read through each one. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of each. Just let me know as we go. Yep. This purpose section is pretty self-explanatory, but then we get into our guiding principles and priorities. So these focus on creating that vibrant, economically viable downtown, increasing investment, and maintaining our Main Street designation, and then coordinating these efforts across events, marketing, and development. These principles, we've reviewed them, and they still align really well with where we are today. And there are 7 guiding principles, and I'm happy to read all of them if you would like, or
how about this? Is there any amendments that has changed since the last out?
So we'll get into, really the core of the agreement is the division of duties. Okay. So we can get to that next session and kind of maybe go through those quickly, each bullet. But just kind of wanted you to have a general sense of the beginning, and if you had anything you'd like me to add or change. So again, let's get into kind of the roles and responsibilities. So the duties of the town, like a quick overview. So staff, the town's role is to staff and lead the Main Street program. It manages economic development and projects, supports planning, infrastructure, and business recruitment, and provides the staff support and coordination. So I'll fly through these real quick. Just have one slight change, I believe. So the town agrees to employ and manage a minimum of 1 full-time town employee to support downtown projects and initiatives. The town employee will serve as the executive director of the DWA, and the town employee will serve as a liaison between the town and the DWA. And you will solicit feedback from the DWA board regarding the executive director's performance for their yearly performance evaluation. And also manage the town's Main Street program, including meeting annual reporting requirements for both national and state designation. And I keep going, but it's collaborating and competing with stakeholders. And then this next one, G, it just had a small amendment. This was assist in the development and implementation of a downtown master plan, and that master plan was adopted last fall. So we could remove G if you'd like, or we are still assisting in the implementation of that downtown master plan. So we could remove in the development and just say assist in the implementation of the downtown master plan. So.
Yeah, I think something to the effect of assist and guide.
Okay.
Assist and guide the implementation of the downtown master plan.
And the only other bullet I would recommend any kind of changes, the other ones looked still really strong and applicable to today, is M. So it has here manage the town's facade grant program and facilitate resources for property and business owners interested in this program. So this is handled by the town's planning department and Janet, the historic planning assistant planning director. So, but we do help assist with this program. So I would just recommend maybe assist and
Coordinate.
Yeah, but we don't
You don't
manage it ourselves. So
No, you're a liaison or coordinator
Yeah, just help them.
at that section at best.
okay. And those are really the only changes that I recommend in that section. Again, I can keep going through each one. And then there was one other similar one in the duties of the DWA. So the DWA agrees to maintain a nonprofit with a board of directors in accordance with its bylaws and active volunteer committees that support the Main Street approach. Will provide quarterly updates to the Board of Commissioners, including quarterly financial reports, adhere to the Town of Waxhaw brand standards for all marketing materials and social media posts, and support the town in measuring and recording the impact of the Main Street program to meet annual reporting requirements for accreditation. We'll provide volunteer capacity and opportunities related to hosting downtown events and related activities, and collaborate and communicate with the town on downtown activities that support downtown businesses, residents, and visitors. And again, item G, just a similar amendment with partner with the town in the implementation of the downtown master plan. Be the update. And then continue on, support the town in marketing downtown events, development projects, and initiatives, lead private sector downtown fundraising efforts to support and enhance downtown activities, businesses, residents, and visitors, and partner with the town to develop and implement programs designed to spur investment and growth, such as the town's facade grant, and support the town in creating marketing materials and messages to promote downtown, work to identify new and existing business growth opportunities, and direct business development leads to the town, and provide feedback to the town on public physical improvement projects. I don't know if I like that word, physical, I don't know what that means. And then provide resources to businesses and property owners during the type of business disruption, and provide feedback to the town regarding the executive director's performance for their yearly performance evaluation. So overall, that is the bulk of it, and then you get into this. It's effective for 3 years, is what's written in this agreement as it stands now. I think it's in a really strong place. I think it clearly outlines the partnership, and it's worked pretty well over the last 3 years. So, but open to any feedback, adjustments, or questions you have on.
So in your review and in your role as well, you haven't found anything or seen anything in here that's sort of out of place and not really useful?
No, as this was signed with prior leadership on both sides of the organization, I thought there may be more, but I thought it was done pretty well.
Okay.
And I really didn't see anything that stood out, and Scott and I both reviewed it and felt pretty confident in it. So.
Looks good.
How many renewals have we gone through?
This is the first one. So
This is the first one?
Mhm.
Okay. With this essentially additional renewal, I think it would be wise for the future renewals to be considered under a longer length of term. When thinking of planning for our municipalities, I know I've been contemplating on what we're here as commissioners to do, and we're trying to set the table for not just 2 years or 3 years, but we're trying to set up a structure for that will be repetitive processes and essentially good systems and lenses to look at through how we're going to support the Waxhaw downtown businesses.
Mm-hmm.
With that in mind, I think larger terms of what we need to do to accomplish. So 5 years, maybe my temporary recommendation, but I mean, when we're thinking about our downtown Waxhaw, we're thinking about it in 5 and 10 year
The only
terms.
thing I see with that, we have volunteers, citizen volunteers, and they might not really be able to commit more than 3 years. That might be daunting, and if they want to
Are you talking service terms for volunteers or term?
For the
Oh,
for the
for the
contract, yeah, for the
contract.
MOU, yeah.
Not service terms.
Well, and I will say the DWA, we once a
For the
year
contract.
review this.
Oh, yeah.
And if we have anything that we feel like we need to amend, we would bring it to you.
Right,
and you could- we
right,
can
right.
make a written amendment as
I
needed,
thought
if
you
things
meant
change
the
or something.
membership.
Nope,
Yeah.
not memberships, just contract length of term.
Yeah, okay.
It's a live document. You can change
Right,
it.
correct.
It's still,
right.
yeah,
Right.
live and living document
Yeah.
that if we need to amend it, but I think looking at the length of term, for right now, it's fine, but
Okay.
for the future, it's worth considering.
I think a longer term would make sense. I
Stability.
was surprised that it was only 3 years, but
Their downside?
since we
And I'm
kind
not
of lived with
sure,
it
I
for a
don't know if it was
while.
3. I don't know if that's because that is the term of our board members is 3 years. So I'm not sure if they were trying to,
And
if
also, I
we
think-
brought in, you know.
Yeah,
a whole new
and that's why
membership. Yeah.
I'm not trying to reinvent it here, but
No,
I
that
just,
makes sense.
something to evaluate for
Mm-hmm.
in the future.
And I think it may have been because I think when you started the nonprofit, when a nonprofit is started, it's the first 3 years before you can accept any larger than X amount of money in fundraising. So maybe that was the bar. They said, let's see how we do in 3
Right.
years,
And
reevaluate
then
and see if we collected that much or more. And so 3 years, 5, I mean, it's a great program.
No, it is, and I'm very excited that we're renewing, and I think that's an awesome first step in supporting our businesses and renewing our business association.
Thank you.
Looks good.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I did see some minor grammatical things, but I was reading
Oh, yes, I
on
will
my
review
phone.
it, yeah. I know, there was a
Can't
couple of
point those
things,
out
yeah.
right now. Yeah,
Grammar police.
Yeah, I think like my heading is misspelled or something.
Yeah.
Something like
I saw
that.
this.
Some odd tenses and things. But yeah, no, it looks good. And as long as we think it's working, I think that's what matters most. So good to hear.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
All right. Can I come back up? Would you like? Next up, we have a discussion for increase in the Waxhaw Youth Council membership.
Thank you, Board. The Youth Council is, when you established them, we decided that 15 members would be appropriate for the first year for that board. It has become very popular. We have more teens wanting to join the council, and so, and they are really ready to start their service initiatives, and they can't do that with 15 people. They want to break out into subgroups and start those initiatives, and by increasing their membership to 30 youth, then that would allow them to break out in those service initiative programs and allow more participation within the community. So we're ready to, we have applications ready to go to interview for those teens, as well as we'd like to start another campaign to solicit applications to get more numbers for them to increase that. So we're just asking for the board to increase that number from 15 to 30. And the Youth Council thanks you if you do.
I was excited to hear that there were so many things they wanted to do. They felt they needed more people to do it. So I think that's awesome. It's great to see so many engaged youth working on this and trying to work on it more. So
Yes, because some of the initiatives that they brought forward was Adopt a Highway. They want to do that here within town. They'd like to collaborate with Parks and Rec to start a community garden where they would do the
Planting.
prepare the garden and then help with the planting, and maybe get some help from the local Lowe's for soil and seeds or plants, and try and do it for a fee, so that the community can come out and, for a fee, have a little section, and they would plant their garden and take care of that within the community. So they do have a lot of ideas. They just need the numbers in order to carry that forward.
Now, there was some talk at the OAB about the membership being a little bit uneven between the high school clusters. Do they have a plan, the current board, to go out and maybe solicit memberships from the other high schools where they might be light on membership?
I think what happened was that the student that spearheaded, part of it goes to one specific high school. And
Right,
so
right.
she really networked within that high school.
Sure,
was
sure, and
able
that's
to-
understandable.
But I think that the word is out. I know it's gone as far as, Weddington and Mineral Springs, and there's a lot of
Okay.
kids inquiring. I think we'll get a better cross-section. Mr. Smith is a Cuthbertson High School teacher, so he will be able, to get those posters out, and I think there is one or two representatives from Cuthbertson, at least one.
Yes, but we go all the way out to Charlotte because they're non-resident, so we
Right,
can
it's- and this is not a
solicit that
formal-
from.
I understand it's not a formal thing.
Yes.
Since there's a non-resident, there's no resident requirement for it. so-
Right, right.
But it would be great to have more of a diverse or broad-based.
Representation
Yeah,
from-
thank you, yeah.
Right, and that's one of the things that we were hoping that some of these kids could, once we start a new campaign, we have a flyer and they take a section of them to the area high schools. I do know that the town of Weddington is thinking of doing a youth council, and I've reached out to the mayor there to see if they would be interested in joining Waxhaw and have a joint council. So we have a Waxhaw Weddington council where we have that section of town covered, and they can go beyond that to have more participation within all the high schools. So if you know of a list of schools that we need to kind of reach out, then we will definitely do that.
Well, I know when thinking of this way the districting goes with our schools, having more programs for different schools to get plugged into, like you're talking about, John, and bringing those opportunities for neighbors to really get together, because sometimes we are separated by schools. Cuthbertson, Marvin, the districting isn't cohesive for Waxhaw families. So this is a great opportunity. Let me give a little accolades to go and start up something in a program and then achieve a core membership of 15 and essentially feeling that they're prepared to double it. What a great achievement. What great work that team has done. And so thank you.
Lots of enthusiasm around it. That's great.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, they're great.
And I look forward to supporting it as it goes from 30 to 50.
We have some really incredible young people in this town.
We do. And
We really do. We need to tap into that talent because they are the future. Let's just face it, they are our future. And the North Carolina League of Municipalities has got an initiative. They did a podcast on the youth and local government. And so the Waxhaw Youth Council is featured in part of that podcast. So the word's getting out. We just need to figure out how to get it further.
Yeah.
And one way to do that is increase the numbers so that they can get it, because, it's by voice. We can do what we can, with advertisement and things, but word of mouth is the greatest way to get it out there.
Should we just give them the ability to increase as they see fit?
Oh, whoa. 30,
Well,
30 high school.
I think 30 high
kids to
schools
wrangle.
is probably enough for 3 advisors to handle at one point in time. But they are great. They
They
are
are, I
so
mean,
smart.
they are.
They are so smart, and the kids are just super.
To quote our staff, I believe this is a living document, and if
Yeah.
they need to come back,
Yeah.
I encourage them to, because that would be a great problem to see more Waxhaw, Marvin, Weddington youth getting plugged in and essentially working together to achieve like-minded goals.
And in order to achieve goals, we'll have to be able to manage them, right? So too many ideas, you kind of want to, let's get them rolling at 30, and then, or if we get 30, and then
And there's
we'll take it
towns that
from
are
there.
clamoring for youth involvement. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
It's great to hear we're transitioning from the crawl, walk, run.
Yeah, we're going.
Well, thank you, Barbie.
All right,
That's
you're
awesome.
welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you,
More the
Barbie.
merrier.
Thank you.
Richard, are you signing yourself up to be the fourth counselor?
So you wanted there to be 50.
He's going to give skateboard lessons. That's
There you go. He'll be out back skateboarding guitar.
And then a cast a couple weeks later.
Yeah.
A boot.
Right.
All right.
All righty, next up, we have some discussions around the capital improvements plan budget.
Hello? Hello? All right, it's on. For the sake of those folks watching from home, as well as giving some more clarity and some better eyesight on some of the materials, because some of the print looks a little small, I think, when you see it on the 8 by 11, as the board discusses it, we went ahead and updated our presentation so that we could add a few more bits and pieces of what you all will be discussing tonight. So, since your retreat, we've been working on preparing two pieces of actions that the board needs to deal with. One is planning capital improvements for the next 5. And so that will be a resolution. Now, the thing about the resolution is it's not an ordinance. So you haven't appropriated money, but you've planned for what the next 5 years look like. So the staff has been working on two things. One, the direction that you folks established in your retreat as a guide, number one. And number two, as to what they do in their daily business and the things that they see, they've put together a list that they believe over the next 5 years are relevant to the operations of the city, the movement of people around, facilities, and things like that. So that's just as a baseline that we have here. So I'm going to just kind of quickly go through things up here, not expecting everyone at the board to twist their head around it and everything, but just to give a little bit more background so we have some context. So the CIP is a 5-year planning tool. It's not appropriations, but it's a planning tool. This is where the board wants its priorities. The staff is recommending to you those things that they feel would meet those priorities and achieve that. And so we can long-range financially plan for these things. Also, the second purpose I think is really kind of important to put down. That's a link the infrastructure needs to your financial capacity. I mean, we could want a lot of things or need a lot of things, but we only have so much capacity. So what does that mean? And how do we do that? And also allows me to finish the budget and be able to present what I think we can do from an appropriations perspective in the capital improvement plan itself. Just a little bit of a brief overview of what a CIP is, just for those watching. We had staff do this. Engineering submitted 15 projects at around $7.05 million. With the transportation and connectivity as your priority focus. In there are projects you folks have already named and haven't, or have only done pieces of, or have done parts of, or haven't even started. Things like Helms Road, you've already started, for example. The multi-use path, the NC-16 turn lane and section improvements, what we called, I think we call that the Broom Street, various traffic signals and other kinds of pedestrian improvements. Parks and Recreation, 32 projects at $5.37 million. Again, some of these overlap, but infrastructure and connectivity, some greenway connectivity and pedestrian infrastructure that has started and/or you've received grants for, and that continued work. Park lighting, safety, and ADA compliance. Remember, you do own Nesbitt as playing space. And we provide that. We don't manage everything on it. WAA does, but that park is owned by the city. Essential amenities such as restrooms, shade structures, or other kinds of things, emergency preparedness, and life safety systems. So those are the kinds of things they listed out. Public services, they had a total of 2. Trust me, they're interrelated with everything else, but they had a total of 2 projects, and one of the big ones will be roof replacement over at the police department, and so we've included that. And then now notice the price thing here, and we'll talk about the policy in a second, but the skid steer replacement is at $80,000. Well, if it was under $50,000, it'd be in your capital outlay. It would be an operating thing that I would come back to you and say, this is an operating. The price pushes it up into capital. So we set some rules, and so we're playing by those rules. But that's why it sits there a little bit differently. Maybe a roof or building or some land purchase or something like that. So you have about $12.75 million in estimated cost. Now, the alignment with the board priorities that staff tried to align with as they went through their list and made these projections to you folks were infrastructure capacity, not keeping pace with growth. Second, they were trying to do capital improvement needs and backlog. In other words, getting up to speed on some things that you folks have either wanted in the past but getting certain facilities up to speed. Transportation, traffic, and connectivity, a very big one. You folks have been dealing with that all year. Long-term fiscal sustainability and cost pressures. All right, so there are 2 actions that we're going to talk about that we would like for you the board to consider at its May 12th, and that is the CIP and the resolution that would go with that. And so that's the plan. And that's the 5-year planning document. So our discussion tonight will be about prioritization. Did we hit that for you folks? What questions do you have? Is there something missing from the list? There's too much stuff on the list? That kind of conversation. Now, one of the things about a plan is, you notice it's a 5-year, so every year we would come back to you, hopefully a little bit sooner than now, but first year getting up and running, we haven't had a CIP as a adopted document, and so we want to make sure that, and then you update that. We update our list, you update your priorities, you make sure things are still in line. Some things come off, things add into the last year, maybe things are moved around the years.
And the goal with that too is to, so I understand you correctly, is to feed the data and the information needed for the budget process.
Exactly.
To make sure that everything's lining up. That
Yes.
We're planning things that, could eventually possibly be on the budget.
Exactly. Yeah, what the CIP does not do is it does not appropriate money.
Yep.
Yeah, you folks do that through 2 separate instruments, your general fund budget and then your capital ordinance. And you do that yearly. You can amend it throughout the year, which you've done. You've been doing those kinds of work on that, but that's where you appropriate. So that's where you spend it. That's what that means, that term of art right there. So, but this gives you a chance to always check everything. Staff a chance to check, you folks a chance to check. Do you like it? Do you not? What has happened that all of a sudden changes your priorities, so you can consider all those things. Now, you could amend the resolution through the year too, understand that if circumstances really did it. But at least it gives us all a planning tool. We're singing from the same sheet of music and we can prepare accordingly. Now, this is really hard to read. We will come back to this, but in the presentation, which we wanted to make sure people could see, this is the spreadsheet version of every request that was listed. It shows it in two ways. Going down, it's the title of them, as well as columns and years. So from our perspective, this is the document that counts to us from an accounting perspective, because this is where we slot things, where we try to plan for things over the 5-year period. At the very far right on this is the totals. Some projects have multiple phases to them or multiple actions that have to be done. And then at the bottom, you have column rows, and they're supposed to all add up in that middle. So there's that 12.7 million sitting over in that bottom right-hand corner. So everything moves from the left to the right and from the top down into that corner and should add up to the same thing. Hopefully our math is correct on that. We think it is. So that's what it looks like over the list against time. Now, the second thing we asked everyone to do is to put into, and you have 3 sheets here, Parks and Recreation, Engineering, put one in, Public Services. These are a couple of things to note on this list. You got a list of what they are, what fund they may come from, what's the annual operating impact on some of these things. If you build a building, you have to staff it, maybe, those kinds of things. If you have more land to maintain, you have to figure out how to maintain it. So, and the last piece is just simply our staff's version of justification against your list, possibly risk management issues, or they're in the middle of a project and it needs to continue forward into these future years. So we've tried to spell that out for you in advance. So engineering would be the next list. A lot of engineering you've been in the last, at least in the last fiscal year, you've been dealing with. You've created a 408 fund for for Broome, 407 for the 16 Bond Grove project, and then another one for Helms. So you created some of those things in this fiscal year where you created standalone capital projects. They are integrated back into this 5-year plan. So we don't just adopt them and then leave them and put them over to the side. They're still up here because they have outer year effects. So we're trying to make sure that you see that. Public services, as we say, the shortest one, the clearest one to see, right? Yeah. But nonetheless, that's where that one sits. And, you can see as an example, putting a roof on is fiscal sustainability because you don't have leaks to deal with. Okay, so that's an example of something. But so that's how folks were thinking as they moved through this. We did not prioritize them. The fact that they're on the list tells you that we feel they are a priority, but we did not say one at the top of the list was the most important one and the one at the bottom was the least important. We said this is the list. So probably the best way to see how we felt as far as priority was what year they show up in. So that's where those columns go across. So in the fund, you'd have, this is the second action now. And this is actually an ordinance. This was actually adopted in 2021. And what we did is we created a CIP fund or savings account, essentially. It is a restricted fund. It is established by you folks, and at the end of every year, we either make auditing, accounting journal entries into it. The board directs amendments of monies into it. And that is, in your terms, in private sector, you would call this your retained earnings fund, okay? This is, but it is restricted. It's restricted for things. So once the audit was done, we felt it important to come back to this fund. If you recall, there was a finding that said we need to make sure we do budget amendments. So what we're doing is amending this. The auditor agrees that this is the proper thing to do, but it helps your CIP. So I want to explain what that means by doing this. So we have this, and we have retained earnings from the last fiscal year, June 30th, 2025, that we put into what's called the unassigned Fund 120. When you get your financial report, at the top are your funds, at the bottom are your bank accounts. They equal each other, but that's where we put them. So in your unassigned fund balance, there's a couple things, reasons for that to be there. Number one, you have to have, for cash flow purposes, so much money in the bank to make sure you can make payroll, do the things in between those times when you're receiving revenues. Secondly, the state requires so much to be in there, and that's the second reason for that being there, for emergency purposes, to be able to carry on if you get a hurricane. You've heard of those. They come through occasionally. Welcome to North Carolina, South Carolina area. But you would have funds in there to carry out either emergency operations and or regular operations with those monies. So that's your money. The second thing is really about cash flow. And cash flow is just as important as anything else. For example, if you get a grant on some of these highway projects, you are getting reimbursed, which means that you are spending first and then requesting reimbursement. Well, if it's a $12 million project and you're getting reimbursed, that's great. But if you spend all $12 million and the other party doesn't pay you in time, you may not be able to pay payroll. So there's a reason for those funds being available and healthy. And, we don't operate by cash here. It's a modified accrual system. So we only get our revenues so often. We just don't get them a lot. So we bank them and then use them and draw them down as the year goes on. So in this particular case, there are a couple of things that you folks have already directed me to enter into agreements with various parties to engage. And that's what these three down here are. Fund 403 Waxhaw Marvin Bridge, that $200,000 is our portion. Helms Road has a second phase. You approved in current monies in this budget year, $750 for design. The next phase will be for right-of-way. So that's what that amount represents. Notice it goes to Fund 406. So it's going to a very specific project that you have signed you have directed me to sign a contract on. The last one's 408, and that's the Broome Street, which you also directed me to do, and that's for our portion of that project at $720,000. Now, what makes this a little bit different is at the end of June in 2025, once the audit was done, we made all the adjusting journal entries, you had retained earnings. I'm going to use that term for y'all because you didn't make a profit, but you didn't spend everything that came in. Our recommendation, because you have obligated, is to move some of those funds, about $1.5 million, over to these funds so that you can accomplish the next phases of your contractual. Now, we do that all the time, believe it or not. At the end of the year, we reconcile those things and we'll move things into various funds. Our recommendation is that by going back and amending this ordinance, it allows the auditor to say you did the right budget amendments. They've agreed with them. They're in the right assignments, and we're going to talk about that here just a little bit, what those terms of art mean that align with the auditor and GAAP and GSAB fund and state law. So we're recommending this kind of movement. All of that to say, in your CIP planning document, go back to the 5-year. You're not starting at zero. You don't have $0 to start that $12.5 million. You actually start at a different number. You have reserves, you have funds that you have allocated this fiscal year, and then you would move these monies from unassigned to a restricted, assigned, and committed section by doing this ordinance. By doing that, you're securing your contractual position, Helms Road, Broome, Waxhaw Marvin Bridge. That's our portion in that capacity. So this is another way of looking at what we mean by those funds. Down the left side, you will see a couple of different terms of art. One is non-spendable. Not sure exactly 100% what that means. It just means that you nor I can spend it. It's obligated in some way. Most likely an inventory issue or something to that effect. I can't ever remember exactly, but it's a pretty small amount. The second one is restricted. So you have said these are for particular things, and it is restricted for that activity. The third is committed. You have committed to doing it. It's not the same thing as a contract. You may have a contract in the future, but right now you've just committed to save that fund there. That sits there. When the contract comes in or the project comes in, then you move it. Most likely you'll move it from committed to restricted. However, maybe the project doesn't happen. So then the board then has the ability to move it back to unassigned. It can move it in other places. The next two sections then are assigned and unassigned. Across the top and in the columns, at the tops of the columns are at the top section and the bottom section, there's two different things. The top are your major revenue funds. And these are funds that you have been building over time, including 403, the capital improvement funds. You can see about 5.9 million in there. Kensington Drive, for example, has 1.3 sitting in it. These are numbers as of June 30th. In my reports that I give to you folks, these highlight and change over the year. You also see other things like Police Equipment Fund. That was something our lobbyist, Deborah Conrad, said, hey, have you spent that down? As of June 30th, we hadn't, but we have now. And if you look in your financial reports you get on a monthly basis, you'll see that's down. That's down to the bottom on that one, for example. 120 is your general fund up there. That is not the same thing as your budget. That is your fund where you put your unassigned or restricted in some cases, but mostly a lot of your unassigned money. That's your fund balance. That's what happens. That's how you carry yourself through the year. So you have those things going across the top. Now, the second set are what you call non-major special revenues. You've created Helms Road capital project. You have PAL bill. You have a cemetery fund. You have a police state drug fund. Those things are very specific. We don't mess with them very much. They have very specific rules that we use, and if you appropriate them, we come back to you and you appropriate them either into your capital improvement ordinance or you appropriate them into your general fund. Fair enough? Okay. So these are your totals. So we wanted to make sure you kind of understood the actions that you have because it's important for the board to make these designations. In those actions, we're actually asking you to not only put it in Fund 403, but restrict it, or put it into Fund 406 and restrict it. Why? So when the contract comes up, you're obligated to it, and it can be spent that way. It's not used for any other purposes. And that's just kind of a guardrail for all concerned, the board, the staff, and the projects. So first off, in going into your CIP itself, you're not starting at zero. You're really starting at around $9 million worth of monies committed against that 12.5. That sounds a lot better than, oh, that's 12.5 and new? We got to come up with that? But the reason you can do that is if the council, the Board of Commissioners makes that action to move some monies around, about 1.5 million, as we just talked about, into those restricted funds from unassigned. Secondly, you already have built reserves, about 5.964. They're in the restricted accounts. And then in the general fund this year, when you adopted the 25-26 budget, you moved current dollars and specified that they go to capital. You were very clear about 2.8 million goes into those funds. So those will, because you've already appropriated, move over into these funds, and they will become restricted. They will become committed. They will become assigned. Okay, they won't go into your unassigned section. They're committed to things. They're assigned to things, or they're restricted for various projects that you've had over time. And in your CIP ordinance that you, I think we amended it back in January, in that list, it also specifies how those funds move around and directs them to go into 403 or 406 or something like that. Sorry for the mechanical discussion. I just want to make sure that the board's very clear that you're not starting from zero. You're starting from around 9. There's been work to create in your world, retained earnings, and you've restricted or assigned them to things in capital modes. Okay.
Cash in the bank.
What's that?
Cash in the bank.
Cash in the bank. That's exactly right.
Thank you.
Just for clarification purposes, so we're starting at 9. Is that 9 already baked in the transfer of 1.5, or is
No.
it 9 plus?
1.5. No. It is 5.9 plus 1.5 plus 2.5.
Got it.
Yeah. That gives you around your $9 million starting point.
Got it. So the 9 has these mechanics baked in.
Already baked in. Yeah.
Thank you.
The last action that we'll recommend to the board at your May meeting is to move that 1.5 from unassigned into a restricted position. Because you have commitments, and we're saying you earned retained earnings before, and the boards have done this traditionally every year. You'll amend and you'll move monies around. 2 budget cycles ago, they would have moved $2.5 million in those unassigned into the Helms Road project for future construction. So you've already got that, and that's sitting in the 5.9 restricted fund. So a previous action showed up in here, and it sits in there. So let's give some more specificity to that. This tells you, this is our guess, and understand this is unaudited. You see this in the financial reports on a monthly basis. You will see these terms of art and this kind of a schedule put in front of you. In column 1 are your cash balances as of March 31st. So that number that was adopted on the 30th of June or adjusted by the auditor, that's there. And now you're all the way up into March 31st. You'll get another financial report. You'll know where it is April. So those are your beginning balances unaudited for various things. For example, that first one that says 213 Rec Barn Learning Center. Now that state appropriation will be gone. It will be 0 by the end of June. It has to by statute. The legislature gave you that money. You have to have expended it. We have a plan to do that. That's what that means, for example. So that is in the restricted fund.
It's already assigned to that project.
It's already assigned. That's exactly right. And you have some various other things that we put up there just so these are numbers that should be familiar to you because we track them. You're always in your financials. We're always showing you what our status of. For example, see that Kensington went from 1.3 million on June 30th, right? It's now at 785 because if you drive down Kensington, you've seen work, right? So there have been expenditures over time. We are allowed to do it. A previous board to you assigned Kensington its own capital project. We can't spend that money on anything else. If we have leftover, let's say we have 100,000 left over, we would come back to you and say, where would you like this directed? And you would probably put it in 403 or a project that's short. So then the police equipment, we just show you that, for example. But the more important one is down in that CIP reserve, helps you get a better understanding of what projects are going on, because you'll see 2 different sets of numbers, the column 2 and the column 1. For example, in Broome NC16, the turn lane design, you had 172,000 in 403 from a payment in lieu of, just like Forest Creek was done with Pulte. You appropriated in the transfer in section in current cash 95,000. okay?
Leaving that balance for paid in lieu.
So that total is what pays for our portion of that design section, okay? So the transfers in are coming from somewhere else. It could be a grant. It might be, in this particular case, it's coming from your general fund. You folks appropriated money in the general fund to go over to the CIP. This is what this is recognizing. The second example would be, for example, the RAB at 75 in Old Providence. We had a payment in lieu, two amounts at 427. You appropriated 282 to match that project of current dollars to make sure it got from here to there. So it goes all the way down the list. You can see at Helms Road, you see the 2.525 million. That is a previous amendment that reserved that amount, so it's restricted. There it sits. Now, if you see in the third column it says transfer out, those monies show up top. Or in something I haven't listed, into a various projects. So for example, the 2.52 on the Helms Road shows up there. It looks like 3,275. You've already appropriated monies in that section. That was added to it. That transfers in for Helms Road. That's what you have for various things on that project. Okay. So we didn't want to go any further out than this. We just wanted to make sure you understood how the money moves around. Those are the projects on that list that you have committed to. Most likely you've reserved it, you've restricted it, you've committed it, or previous boards have done that. It's restricted, it's assigned, it's committed. We have to acknowledge that. We show that. You've then matched with other dollars. Now you have X amount of funds. That gives us our beginning balance when we look at CIP. We may not spend everything this year in this fiscal year. For example, we're doing Helm design, but we may only do $50,000 worth of it in this fiscal year, okay? It sits in its own fund. It'll move forward.
Carry over?
Yeah, it carries over. Okay. So you have carryover in this effect. Okay. Sorry for the long way of getting you there, but you have, I wanted to help the board understand and the people listening. In this ordinance action, we're suggesting and recommending to you that you take from your unassigned 1.5, put it over here, and then the money show up in these various spots. Now, these add up to more than. We understand that. We got that. These are estimates of cost, especially the 848 and the 720. It could be more. It could be less. We don't know. We've tried to do the best job we can with estimating our numbers. I think our folks do a really good job with that, but that's where that sits. So when you do this, you're kind of moving that commitment and making that work for us. So that gives us that beginning balance to work with in the CIP fund. So that's why I can look at you folks and say, we're starting at around approximately $9 million when we look at the 5-year plan. Some of these projects are already approved, you're already in process, they're in the 5-year plan as well. So they're in there. What does that mean? Staff has proposed about $12.5 million in capital expenditure over 5 years. $9 million is already allocated or reserved. So your shortfall starts at $3.5 million, which over 5 years is easier to handle and think about than 12.5. Okay? Secondly, you have in that plan obligations. I've signed a contract because you directed me to do that. It was previously signed. It's an authorized contract that we're in the middle of. Helms Road is the example just for conversation perspective. And we are short in those commitments about 1.5. So at a minimum, if you didn't approve anything else on your list from CIP perspective, you're still short 1.5 for Helms. You just are. Mm-hmm. Last year's budget recommended 2.5 to shore it up. We did 750 for design. By moving that 848 over, you're committing to the next piece. You already have 2.5 million in there. Now you're short 1.5. But those years, we go back to that bigger plan, it's farther out. It's 28, 29, 29, 30, okay, before things begin to start to happen. So the board's got a little bit of time, but we have to be conscious of that, right? Okay, so that's an example of where you have an obligation in this. We start with some cash, but you're going to have to build every year when you do this. So there's also some other potential obligations out there, but you haven't been awarded anything. SS4A is going to be one. You'll consider that, but you don't have that yet. So that would be an obligation. If you were awarded that and you accept it, then we would go back, do some work with you folks, and figure out how to obligate our matches. And our matches, I think you folks have agreed on, are about $300,000 a year. Mm-hmm. Some of that work, for example, in the SS4A replaces some of your projects on that list, so it takes some heat off of that. And talking to staff today in engineering, we have a $900,000 note on the engineering slide. That does not need to be done. That's actually paid for out of a different system. So that's some saving right there in that cost structure. So we would have some places to go to and talk to you folks and say, this is what we would recommend we would do to propose that project. Remember that $300,000 a year, if you got the SS4A, is leveraging, $7.5, $8 million, something to that effect. So that's $1.5 million over 5 years is your portion. The rest of it comes from the federal government, if you get that.
If we get it, our obligation would have essentially 1.5, but the total awarded amount we're dealing with for sequencing Safe Streets for All of Waxhaw is
7.5, something to that effect. I'm not going to, don't nail me down to the exact number, but it's a number somewhere in that range. So but that's not worked in. And the reason it's not worked in is because you haven't said that's what you haven't approved that grant application yet. You'll do that in May. And we're working towards that. We think it's a good thing to do. You thought it was a good thing to do, but you still have future actions that you have to take on that. Second, shortfalls in construction cost. Folks, things are getting much more expensive every single month. 6 months, the prices of asphalt and other things are going up. I think everybody understands a lot of that. So we don't know that. We've done our best, but we don't know what final costs are. And you also have expected future revenues and payment in lieu to be expected, but that's mostly cash in, cash out for portions of various development projects around town. So instead of putting that in here, we just didn't. It's a cash in, cash out. If they're short, we got to come back to you and say, this is what we need to do. But right now, until a CO is applied for at Yarborough, at a Rogers Pond, or something like that, we don't cash them. In the Forest Creek example, though, they have done most of their stuff. And we've used payment in lieu of for various things that they've done to date. So that's an example of where we would use something on an improvement offsite somewhere else. Now, this also doesn't highlight a couple other funds that you guys use and you segregate. Someone asked one day, what is Fund 385 or that small transportation fund? That's the $25 fee on your car. That money, by ordinance, is directed into this Fund 385. We use that to do non-PAL bill transportation projects, things that PAL bill wouldn't cover, if that makes sense. PAL bill will cover most things within the right-of-way that are associated with the road, but they won't cover everything. So that fund was created many, many years ago in order to supplement PAL bill and be able to handle things. For example, we hit a rather interesting stormwater thing in the downtown as the county hit it, and then We went in with our obligation on the stormwater. They were dealing with the water. We coordinated that out right there at the corner of North Main and Church. But that's an example. We're going to probably hit quite a few more in the downtown. It's got years of and layers of all kinds of interesting things. Stormwater, pipes that don't go to anywhere, pipes that do go to somewhere and nobody knew about, you know, things like that. So it's that kind of thing. It's maybe curb cuts in certain places. It's other improvements in right-of-way that wouldn't be POW bill expendable. So we manage those in separate projects. They are restricted funds. They sit over there and have to be used for those purposes for which the ordinances say. So that's an example. POW bill's Fund 290, you don't mess with it. For example, we'll go out to bid for streets repaving this year, and we'll combine 1 and 2 years in order to maximize so we have a good enough RFP for services and see if we can't get more economies of scale out of the pricing structure, right? So we'll flip that over 2 years and maximize that. Instead of doing 500,000, we'll do $1 million, if that makes sense. So those are restricted funds again. Fund 470 for Kensington. Okay. So that is all of the background I wanted to make sure you understand. You're not starting from 0. You're starting from around 9. You have prior commitments on these lists. Most of those sit in engineering and transportation. That's where the majority of those sit. The rest do not have necessarily funds attached. However, there's a grant we received, I think, for a trail grant. Bridge. That requires a match. So that would be a Fund 403 section that we would deal with. Those are the kinds of things that would exist. Again, it's an existing contract. We've signed or agreed to a grant. We would have to fund those things. And then you don't see the capital outlay. That's your vehicles, your equipment, some of those things that are under that 50,000 range. Even though we might buy 10 or 5 police cars at a time, they're still under a certain range. So they sit in your, so they'll sit in your capital outlay or your operating expenses. Okay. I'm going to stop there. And just ask you if you have any big questions before you dive into anything or give any further direction.
I wrote a bunch of stuff down today, and you answered a lot of them, which is pretty good stuff. When you end a fiscal, wrapping up FY 26, going to FY 27, money, obviously you want to end up in the black every year, and you have cash reserve. Does that go into your general fund for FY 27?
Goes under unassigned.
Unassigned?
So that becomes, in your terms, in the business world, a retained earning.
Correct.
Right.
Any other questions from the board?
We just gotta dig in.
Just like that, you can see the previous CIPs broken down over the course of the years. It's easier to take in, and it's not so daunting. You can actually read it and see it and where the money's going to, and then how we're going to pay for it.
Exactly.
So what you have on this big sheet, I'm going to put up that sample just up there so people know from what we're talking from. Let me make sure. Okay. That. Can't see it, sorry. It's in front of you in writing. This is a work session. This is the big list. So this is every single thing that was on those 1 sheets, seen both totally and over time. If I was going to tell you that there's a priority by staff, it really has more to do with when they show up. 2027, it's coming now, most likely obligated. And that obligated is important. So as you go through a list, so let's say if you went down Pine Oak and you said 194, where's that? We did put that into reserve. So that's got a, for example, that's something that's happening right now. So that's the signal that'll happen on Waxhaw Marvin when that road gets straightened out. And when that does, that's our port. That's probably the last portion. Now you don't see any other cash for Pine Oak because the developers paid for it. This is our portion when they do that improvement.
just as an overall, when thinking about needs versus wants, the engineering and the public services really, to me, seem all like needs. I don't really see anything on there that's not a need. Although, of course, there's one item on engineering that's TBD, the Kensington Drive sidewalk. You know, it's hard to put a priority if we don't know the cost. So maybe I would make that one a little lower, just because of the TBD.
Right.
And then the Parks and Rec has a lot more TBDs, which I would say the same thing for. But if we don't know the cost, it's, you know, hard for us to prioritize. So I guess the first item on that one is the Town Creek Park light pole only. So this is one light pole for Town Creek Park? Is that what that means?
Don't know. Let me, if you don't mind, I can pull Dina up and she can give you any background that you might need. Dina, can you come on up?
And on those, some of those TBDs, is that something by the time you were to vote on, you know, the budget where we've set the priorities, will some of those costs be available to us? Is that possible?
Just shy of $1 million on
Yes.
2 projects.
Okay, yes, it would, to answer your question, because in order to expend it, you would have to appropriate it. So, for example, there's a TBD on sales for shade sales for sport coat. That's down, that's like the 5th or 6th thing down. And it has a TBD, and that TBD is in fiscal '28. If this meets your priority and you keep it on your spending list, before you could appropriate it, we have to come back and in either the budget itself or the CIP say, if this needs to get done, this is where the money would come from, this is what it would be spent on, and you'd have to have a dollar figure.
We'll just have to stay nimble right before decision.
Well, let me explain the process, just so, John, you're going through this a first time here. So let me say that your 2 big bites at the apple are with the budget and the CIP ordinance. So those are both ordinances. They're both coming to you in the next couple of weeks. That's your debate. That's what you adopt. That's your yearly appropriation and expenditures on things. In those things, they must be balanced. They must show where the revenue comes from, and they must show what's being expended. So it couldn't be a TBD, okay? So by the time it gets to an appropriation, now halfway through the year, the board can amend either one of those as it sees fit, as a project moves up, as you want it up your priority list, or as a need arises. In other words, the old one broke, the pole fell over, whatever it is. When we come back, we have an obligation to say to you, you need to amend this budget. We recommend you amend this budget. This is where the money would come from, or this is what we'll drop in order to afford it. You know, there's a lot of choices that the board has at that point in time. But we won't spend anything on this list until you appropriate it.
Absolutely.
So I just want to make sure that that's kind of clear in this process. Now, you went back, let's go back to Commissioner Dawn's question about the Town Creek light pole only.
The lighting plan for Town Creek. We actually had this in a CIP project a few years ago, but those funds went appropriate to the trail greenway upgrades in Prescott. So in the middle of a year, a need came up. We dropped the project to actually do the Prescott Trail on 12 Mile Creek because it was basically eroding into 12 Mile Creek. So that's when an example of a need came up, and we racked and stacked and decided that was the best part of action, is to fix the need part, the critical safety issue. So the lighting would be for the parking lot and for the field. As you know, we have a partnership with WA for Nesbitt, and we don't have all the time have access for general citizens to use the fields. So we do have a multipurpose field at Town Creek. Our purpose at the time, and still is to have that availability for regular citizens to be able to either rent the field out for play, practice, rollers from school practices. So that gets asked from us a lot. So that's the reason why that is on the list.
So when it's, I'm just trying to understand what it means when it says light pole only. What does that?
That did not get fully explained on there. Is lighting for the park.
So I don't think it's a singular light pole. I think it's a Town Creek lighting plan.
Yeah, so it's the whole park for Town Creek.
Okay.
The poles.
Well, then I have a question then with
Yes, sir.
that, if you don't mind. Going down here for that same throughput year, FY 2029, we have Town Creek lighting plan. Then we also have the Nesbitt field lighting plan. Are both field lighting plans being implemented FY 2029 because of contractors for the expenditures?
Oh, I see, 275.
So we're running that same lighting plan essentially in both our park systems that same fiscal year?
So, for example, when we got, yes, so you can get more bang for your buck if you do things together.
So is that for
And that's
sequencing of contractors?
That was the consideration. For example, when we were doing the light plan for Town Creek, we're actually doing the same upgrades to Field 3 at Nesbitt, where they just got lights, and we were combining them together. But in the end, we chose to rack and stack. Field 3 still got their LED lights because that was a huge priority for that park. And then the upgrades went to, the safety upgrades went to the Greenway in Prescott. So whenever we do a project, I'm looking at that strategically, especially with lighting, because when the bids come back, when they're mobilizing at any location, it's easier to have everybody together at one time, especially with these two parks. They're very close in nature. That was a huge help for us.
Yeah.
Does that help your question?
Yeah. I just wanted to get an idea of, the scope of this lighting.
Yes, sir.
Because
Yep.
when it says light pole, it makes me
No,
think of like one pole.
No, I was like, no, honey, sorry. Yeah. But the reason why it also, we did have it earlier in the years, but because of the bridge getting redone, the Waxhaw Marvin Bridge that Mr. Scott was talking about earlier, we moved it out until after the bridge is done, because they are going to take some right-of-way that's inside Town Creek and into Prescott on that side, because we actually own both sides of the street right there. And what that's going to do is it gives us to kind of like let the dust settle, because you definitely don't want to put electricity in an area that's going to have construction in it within 6 months. So,
Well, that's the other thing I wanted to ask was, are these light installations going to be resilient considering they're going to be in a floodplain?
yes, sir. So, because you know that Nesbitt goes swimming every once in a while as well. So it's the same lighting company that we've used, Musco, the last 2 times. They are very aware of our conditions, and when you go out to Nesbitt, you'll see that all the panels are actually at your height. So that is helpful on how we plan things. Good question.
So I guess as I'm looking at this list, Dina, I would like to prioritize more of the safety features. If I'm looking at risk management, mitigating our risk,
Yes, ma'am.
so as far as, if I'm looking at lighting, where we need lighting, that would be fine. The bollards, obviously, are important for safety measures downtown.
Security cameras.
Now, the security cameras, I mean, it is a safety feature, but safety from vandalism and theft, I guess you're...
Yeah, so Nesbitt has a little more mischief making out there than I would like. And we have vandalism where we have, they seem to always find the small little pocket where we don't either have a rock or a gate, and they get on a field with their vehicles. So that's something we're still, like at Christmas time, we had another incident that happened on Field 6. So that's something that we would desperately need on that aspect to keeping the park safe. PD will probably back me up on this, on when the waves of car break-ins happen, they seem to hit Nesbitt more when those waves happen. And they don't happen all the time. We do actually have signs up saying, please lock your car, hide your valuables before you come to the park. Mom and little Johnny is rushing to get to practice, and sometimes that doesn't happen. Or, the puppy wants to go for their walk on the greenway, and we just, they don't think about the consequences of leaving valuables out on their seat. Those are the reasons why for those higher risk areas. But it's also, we have thousands of kids at this one location on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and having that extra, if God forbid something happens, we have some backup to help my PD friends help with that.
So I guess the lighting for safety, I mean, I'm okay with that. I think that's important. I think that, like I said, the bollards, when we have parades or downtown events, that's last on that list.
It's
page 54, 55.
It's further out because we were waiting for the water and sewer to be done. That's the reason why.
Okay.
Because
But
everything.
not low on the priority list. As
No,
far
I'm just
as-
saying in
Sorry, yeah.
the way, where it is on the
Right, okay.
list, it's,
Because we have to, that's the whole, like with the bridge, we have to wait until other people do what they need to do in the area before we can.
but it would be in the next 5 years.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I mean, I'm saying that's fine, let's keep that there.
Okay.
The restrooms for Emerson Park, I just don't really, not that there's not a need, but if I'm prioritizing, I would say that would be bottom.
And also the Town Creek Park restroom.
Yeah, and the town, I mean, that's a lot of money right now when we're looking at all these road improvements. And then, again, I'd like to focus more on safety features. And as far as the trails and that, I think that the Parks and Trails
We'll pick up some of that slack.
committee would hopefully, maybe we can move that to their focus. I know that they're very focused on the trails.
Yes,
So I
ma'am.
would love, for me personally, I'd like to see that prioritized to that group.
With the, can I ask for clarification?
Okay.
The bridge grant that Mr. Scott was talking about earlier, so we already have $250 for the $500,000 project. So that would be something that is a critical need for this coming up budget cycle, because we just need to actually.
So which bridge is that?
That is the Prescott
12
Glen.
Mile Creek.
Oh, no, yeah,
Yes, yeah, that's the big
yeah,
one.
That's the
right?
big one. No, we
Yes.
need that one.
And then, so that would be something I would think is a critical need because of where it's at and where the connection to, and that's, we're finishing up Town Creek to Millbridge right now. That'll be done by the end of June.
Right.
So you will be able to go from South Carolina to Prescott. With that
Right.
bridge, you'll be able to get to Prescott Village.
Right, no, the bridge is, I mean, we have to finish that.
Okay,
So that's,
just clarification on that. And then the other clarification about the lights, it's the Nesbit ball field, field 1 and to move over to LEDs.
Yes.
And the field 4, 6, and 7.
yes.
Okay, just double checking.
Those are the ones that have to be, they're halogen now, or
Yeah, they're,
whatever they are.
yes, they're,
So there's still 4 fields that don't have the LED at this point?
correct. Yes, sir. They're no longer making the bulbs, so we're having to find them, and it's being more challenging to find them. So I estimated within the next 2 years, we won't be able to, and that's a safety issue and
We'll
playable.
Start closing fields,
We would have to close them at nighttime.
Yeah.
And
moving bulbs around, basically.
we don't want to do that.
And then
Just more cost input for
Field 2
maintenance and
doesn't have
more
lights right
opportunity
now.
for
Those would be new
risk.
lights for Field 2.
Field 2 is our smaller kids ball
T-ball.
field. Is it like the little kids, like the 4 to 7-year-olds are in there? That, again, is a need, it's on the master plan for it to happen. Do I feel that that's a safety thing right now? No.
Right,
I feel that field 1, 4, 6, and 7 is our safety need, because we will have to close down operations if we do not transfer over to LEDs.
Right, so yeah, I think 1, 4, 6, and 7. I think lights for field 2, we can push back.
They can be pushed back.
Let's push that back. T-ball's usually done earlier in the day anyway.
The other, the skate park is embedded in the Barnes allocations. It would need directions, because we just got back the bids. We got 7 companies, and we'll be scoring them at the end of the week. And then we'll come back to y'all about what that looks like.
But that's skate park only, right? That's not.
There's just a skate park. So I think this portion was already in.
Yes.
And it just didn't get the clarification of just the skate park.
Right.
So that's the reason why I just want to make sure I've got clarification that one of these lines is the skate park.
Yes, and then I think we can hold off on the Barnes Park amenities and connectivity for now, trying to keep our focus on safety.
Yep.
Would be.
We all identified the skate park has some safety issues.
Yes, and then, was the pedestrian bridge on here? Did I see that? The downtown,
So that is in engineering, and
Okay.
it's a dual thing
Right.
with us, but it got landed in
okay,
engineering.
I thought I saw it, I just didn't remember
Yep,
where I saw it.
and that's a critical,
That's critical.
very critical need.
Got it.
I was just going to clarify in that. That's of the engineering things on the top. We talked about the necessary needs for those things, and we just kind of moved past. But I did want to highlight that one. We strongly recommend that we start a reserve fund just for that bridge. I'm recommending $50,000 a year, but that is possibly short of what it would potentially truly cost to do that bridge.
Okay.
So I'm going to probably recommend in a reserve position as a part of expenditure out of general fund, making sure we're putting money aside specifically for that.
Okay.
And start with a commitment and then work it from there. Right now, we're fine, but we have been looking at that bridge quite a bit. So we want to make sure that we're building a reserve for that. I just wanted to clarify that in that section.
And there's a intercom system for the Waxhaw Rec Barn, which is somewhat of a
So we-
large ticket for intercom. And there was an intercom system for the downtown park, too, that you
Yes, sir.
have on there.
So the intercom system for the downtown park is the wiring is already done. It's the actual speakers themselves and then the component to make them work. We did a great job of the amphitheater of keeping the sound in the amphitheater, but when announcements are made at the amphitheater, it does not reach outside of its bubble, that's what it was supposed to do, to help out with the neighbors. So that is a safety concern when it comes to a lost child, to giving announcements, storm coming, things like that. But again,
How are we addressing that now?
so when the park staff is, like, we only have one staff member on site, they are addressing it by just yelling or getting on the gator to move them up. At an event, y'all have seen me. I've got like 5 walkies on me. So we're constantly on the walkies, talking to PD, talking to the volunteers, talking to staff, and then corralling that. But again, it is safety, but is it? There's certain levels of safety.
Municipal parks.
Hey, John.
Oh, go ahead.
Dina, walk me through the scoring system on how you determined and landed that it was high.
Yeah.
When I went back to y'all's, from the retreat, and looked at your priority for Tier 1, and safety was the big portion of and then when y'all went
But how does a PA system at our downtown park address physical safety, not just communication safety? Because technically you have that covered right now, and it would only be a supplemental. It would not be a replacement of your comm system and how you operate.
So we don't have a comm system now.
You have a walkie-talkie comm system, yes?
At events,
At events.
correct.
But that would,
this would replace it.
so for
This
an
would
expenditure of, let me make sure,
271.
271 systems, so we have a PA system at our downtown park for non-events, because it doesn't this is a supplemental system for events, not a critical system.
Yeah.
I don't see how it lands on high in scoring on that one.
Because we were
I do
treating
see
it.
how it could be moderate for implementation, but not high, in my personal
Great
opinion.
feedback.
When scoring it, when thinking about it, with what we would do to implement it and utilize it, I don't see it being a dollar-for-dollar value at this time.
Yeah, I don't go to too many other municipalities' parks, but this would be a significant technological upgrade from where maybe many of them are.
I mean, I can see.
Severe.
I mean, I can see, why Dina would maybe say,
Oh,
well,
yeah,
if there's a
for
lost
safety.
child and it's
Yeah.
my child, I'm going to think it's an emergency.
Yes, I want the
There's an
Walmart. I want the
Amber
Walmart to
Alert
hop on the PA
perspective
system
there.
and
Right.
announce that my kid's
But I
lost
think, but I think that Dina would even say that, in thinking about it, is it, so I think we can probably maybe push it a little bit.
I think when thinking about essentially spearheading our resources and tools and what we're going to do, again, the PA system would not change day-to-day or event operations technically. And those are our most critical, highest needs when looking at it. And you would still be on a walkie-talkie system. If there's a lost child, you would still follow your SOPs that are built today. The PA system would be a supplement to it, not a deviation or an expansion of it, to where
It would be another tool.
it would just be another tool.
Yeah,
I totally understand that.
yeah.
Pretty much when the subject matters that I've said out loud are higher priority for me.
Yeah.
Sure, that's fair.
Well, yeah, and you're there all the time.
And we definitely appreciate that input because you are seeing the day-to-day ops and you are seeing the day-to-day mechanics.
And
Good
one
discussion.
item on that particular list too, that was talked about, I think at length a year or so ago, was the shade sales.
Correct.
So to see those drop in priority kind of.
Well, the playground shades we have it as critical.
The playground.
The
The playground
ones.
ones.
Okay.
And I think that's okay
downtown
because
park.
it's younger kids.
Yeah, and I can say,
It's hot.
having little ones during the summer, those slides, that equipment, it warms up.
Yeah.
Even
It will,
the turf.
and it
The
gets hot.
turf
That
is-
turf reflects back and everything gets,
We need to get some metal slides.
Metal slides do count.
hey,
Part of becoming a man
I mean, if you
in the
have to
South,
down
Daniel,
a
it is
metal
part of
slide.
becoming a man in the South.
yes, sir, metal slides.
Learn how to do your tough skins down that
My
stuff.
jungle gym, yeah.
I've been burned by many.
Many. But the playgrounds shades has been very much a citizen-driven request.
Citizen request. A lot of that shade
Uh,
stuff, we have a couple
Yeah.
shade items here, and I know that
And that
those
was
have been
made,
strong
y'all
voices
heard
in
it.
the
Y'all heard it.
Oh, yeah.
So that is, the playground specifically is, we had that as critical because of this, between 12 and 4 o'clock on a 90-plus day, you're not in that area. Even with the water, with the tree pod there, it's still really, really hot.
Yeah, I think that's
For the
okay.
little kids, that's understandable.
That's understandable.
I think though, for like sports court, for older kids, maybe they can just handle it. And then, amphitheater roof, 500,000, that's a little,
Not a need.
little much, I
enough.
think.
When thinking about deploying our resources and we're trying to address, and we have a great list of criticals. You have provided us a great list of criticals. When I'm thinking of deploying resources in that amphitheater roof, it's just not a high or moderate priority at this time.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
if,
It's a weather protection for performance
for the
events. What would
performers,
we be
but,
doing?
but if the
And-
weather's no
At that
good for
point?
the performers, it's not going to be good for the people
It's
there.
inclement weather, it's going to be done.
And I was going to say, inclement weather, thunderstorms, wouldn't that shut down our events 9 times out of 10 anyways?
Yeah.
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 Plus that FY '29, that's a 1.785
Yeah.
layout for Park and Rec. That's the heaviest fiscal year.
For engineering and Parks and Rec.
Correct. So a lot of layout for FY '29.
Is there consideration of maybe moving some of the projects out?
Well, yeah, I'm not saying
Yeah,
discard
not an
them.
eliminate.
I'm just saying, just let's push them back.
When looking at this, when looking at FY 2027 to FY 31, we have some maneuverability room. Not a lot, but a little bit. And it is good to review to see, 30 and 31.
FY30.
Yeah, can we go to,
So I think 30 has the suspension bridge in it. We're coming up on 15 years, or close, well, no, it's
No,
12.
yes.
It was done the year before the department was formed, so 14, 15, and it needs some TLC. So that's the reason why that's in that year.
Which amount is that?
It's,
I'm examining amphitheater roof.
no, I'm talking about the
No, it's the
suspension bridge,
suspension
it's South
Oh,
Carolina, North
Yeah, I was
Carolina.
going to say, can you give me a year, please, for the suspension bridge?
It's,
I thought it's 30.
You got it in 30.
30.
You have it in 30.
well, let's see.
I think another thing that would be important is, I think another thing that's important is if it's been listed, Dina, as a priority, as the board's been going through safety and some of those things, if it has a TBD, you need a number. So maybe some research on the number. And possibly if some of these things are moving to farther out years, having some form of a number would help us understand what to save for too. So those kinds of things would be helpful in the planning process.
Always.
I know it's not a large amount. The pavement Phase 2, Nesbitt Park, FY, I believe that's under 2029. What's our, I know we have a scoring system for our asphalt. I know we don't want to let it degrade. Do we know a status? Is it critical, fair, moderate?
So we had engineering, Mr. James and Mr. Matt from Public Services come out, and we just finished up the first phase, and that was from the roundabout up to the parking lot. That was the most critical.
Okay.
Right? So that was where all the alligator cracking was happening, because that's what was underwater the most.
Park is underwater.
Literally all the time. And then it was kind of gravelly at the cul-de-sac too, so we had to get that, that was critical. Now, when we moved out the other ones, because they weren't, with James's scoring system, they didn't rank high for us to go, it's like, okay, we don't have to worry about this until a couple more years. And then now that they have, Public Services has that crack sealer machine, which is awesome.
We can evaluate.
We can make repairs on it until it gets to the point of needing.
We could extend the life.
We're extending the life
with the
of it.
tools that Public Service offers through the crack sealing technology.
That we just got, which is
That we
awesome.
just got. So we can evaluate to see if we can.
Push that out a little
push
bit
that,
more if we
and
need
there's
to.
if there's a better date to deploy that at a later time.
Yes, the parking lot, I think I have on there, that is a little more in need. If you've been to Nesbitt parking lot, it's kind of rocky and
that's-
gravel in a lot of areas.
And that's why I wanted to ask, is that in phase two, where that sequencing is at for that
So with
need?
I would go for, if a paving, I would go for the parking lot next.
Okay.
But we're managing it. We put cones up to make sure directional wise, we make sure we're communicating really well with WA on how that goes. But again, for Nesbitt, the lighting is the most critical.
So then, with that, can we give some direction for staff to reevaluate to see and recommend possible changes within, not the capital improvement list, but timing and sequencing for years of deployment, and see if they could come back with a revised?
We've been making note of that, so we'll have a discussion about this to follow up.
And I would say I wouldn't want the parking lot to become so damaged that it's gonna cost us double. So,
Definitely.
I mean,
Yeah.
just keep an eye on that. And
Yeah.
if we need to keep it where it is, then we keep the parking lot where it is. If we have to flip the phases, whatever has to get done.
If it's,
Question out of ignorance, Dina and board, Mayor, you've been negotiating with WAA. Do they pay us anything to use our facilities?
No. They.
I'm sorry, I said it out loud. I didn't mean to, but
Yeah, short
I
answer is
needed to
no.
ask the question. The answer is no.
Exactly. They cover the costs of field maintenance. So basically, inside the field, WAA takes care of
Okay.
stripes, keeping the grass green.
That was in the
goals,
agreement.
all that stuff. That's what the agreement's about.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to ask out loud. I just
Sure.
wasn't sure. Thank you.
Yeah, the driveways, the parking lots, the streets, the side.
That's ours.
Yeah.
Okay.
The lighting,
The
all the infrastructure is us, except for.
concession stand.
Yes,
that's
the
all.
restrooms.
And then I would say foul ball nets and that sort of thing, I mean, not, but
So we have been,
Immediate, yeah.
so when requests come in, we ask for partnerships. And for example, we upgraded some of the fencing on Field 1, and that was a partnership with WAA, because they really wanted it for that area. And so we did more of a partnership. They made other requests, and we made requests back on how that partnership looks. So that could be a partnership.
One of the big requests was the dugouts. That was something that WA has been concerned with because they are literally eroding away. The soil underneath the dugouts is disappearing with each significant rain event. So that's something that's an example of one of those things that it might get so bad that it becomes a complete tear down, which it's probably there already, but.
So we had a little bit of extra money last year that we we did the roofs, but we had to still do but we kind of broke it up. Again, I'm very mindful of our budget and like not super hard on the team about it, but it's more of this is not our money, and they know that, and we penny pinched to the nth degree to make sure we can make things happen.
Well, I just think if you said, if there can be a partnership, then that moves up on the priority list. But, if I'm looking at lighting for safety, or a kid might have to go find a foul ball in the grass.
Or somebody has to yell, hey, or look out. Yeah.
Catch the ball. Or, we have a couple of spare balls. I don't know. I'm trying to, needs and wants.
And they would be
I'd rather
very
prioritize
appreciative of the lights. I mean, because this, playing under LEDs is a lot different from halogen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keeping the lights on is a big part of the whole program, because we know they play deep into the fall when things
Yeah.
are getting dark
Yeah.
early, so. Sure.
Keeping the lights on, keeping essentially the infrastructure, dugouts, we know that they flood when the rains come. We know that that's the key issue, but at the same time, whether it was the WAA and our Waxhaw families through that organization utilizing our parks, or whether it was the town putting together a sports program for baseball and utilizing the dugouts, we would still need to repair and maintain the dugouts for our families that are utilizing those fields. So just when I'm thinking about it, that's how I look at it. But
I guess
to Sue's point, netting and foul balls, hey.
Foul balls are about having your hands out front and not being as late.
It's good practice.
Late to the pitch.
It
I mean,
is.
because if you're late to the pitch, you're always going to foul. That's what my coach told me.
Unless you pull it,
Unless you pull it.
and then I pulled
Okay.
it.
I just thought I'd make that point very clear.
But,
I mean, that's a given.
Now we know what the solution
Just to
is.
be creative for the dugouts.
Get your hands out in front, or
If there were a team of volunteer handymen, is that something, I know it's liability, I get all that. But, in working in a Title I school, sometimes we had to do that. We put stuff together and we pitched in, and we had Lowe's supply the wood, and so the teachers and, custodial staff got together and we put things together. Is that something that we could do as a municipality, or is the risk too high, or is there any way to mitigate that?
So, good segue. So we actually do have partnerships with community-minded people. So, for example, we have a Boy Scout project happening at Town Creek right now. He's redoing, doing some TLC to the fence and putting in the sensory/pollinator garden for the butterflies, and upgrading on the little library that's there. So he is doing a lot of TLC work where, for example, we got the mulch there and then the supplies there, and they did all the labor. So we do already community partnerships like that. The Waxhaw Women's Club, they took over their seal garden.
Right.
So we brought all the supplies there, and they did a work day and to make it all spruced up. Same thing with the downtown park. So we do have those components we can utilize. At this time, I don't think we have somebody for Nesbitt Park, but that could also be a great partnership with the WA for some volunteers to come and help.
I'm thinking if that's, we already have that partnership, if we can be creative, and if they really want dugouts, and we want to help them get the dugouts, but we don't want to, I don't know, what is the price on the dugouts?
So it's the infrastructure of the pads is what the mayor was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
We haven't, there are issues because when we do get rain,
Yeah.
and a lot of rain, it gets way
Eroded from underneath
yeah,
the
it's-
cement
it's-
pad.
It does, and because the water comes through Nesbitt like a river through field 2, 3, and 4, and just gut them, and dumps all that red clay into field 6. So it's just a lot of wear and tear over the last couple of years, and we've had some significant flooding. you know, where we're like right now praying for rain, but the, you know, fast forward rain is, you know, no good for anybody. But those things over time, even with our daily maintenance, it's hard to keep up when it's get to a point.
Right.
And I'm trying to get shored up on current parks and get them to a point of more sustainability. And that's the reason why the lights need to get redone. And that's the TLC with the undercarriage of the dugouts. So it's, we do TLC, we do maintenance on each park weekly. But there is, you know, we're in charge of all the outside areas, and WA is in charge of the inside.
Yeah.
Dina, looking at your list, can you walk me through a little bit? CTT Greenway. So, towards the bottom half, it's sequenced for FY 2029 for about $250K. Just underneath 12-mile pedestrian bridge, 12-mile greenway, and then CTT Greenway connection, cold water mill.
FY '29.
Oh, yeah, what is
Oh, that's in, okay. Sorry, I had to like figure out where it was in time. Okay, so Coldwater is in Millbridge. So the Carolina Thread Trail goes through Millbridge, through one of their spine trails. We actually connect to it at Nesbitt, and then it comes through the construction bridge at Nesbitt, the concrete bridge. It goes south towards Town Creek, where the section we're about to finish up. Then it keeps going south towards Coldwater. In our easements that we have in Millbridge, there's a section.
So this
it's
would be
a
a
culvert.
tertiary section, a C section, past.
Yeah, so it's going to actually come through, start at their trail, and then go through the, there's like a little stream that goes in the middle there, and then comes up with that little park with a little golf thing. And then it shoots off to Coldwater, goes up to Waxhaw Marvin, and then the thread trail hits Waxhaw Marvin and straight into the downtown, goes in the Serpentine Walk, goes over the pedestrian bridge, and then out to Mineral Springs. So that's the Carolina Thread Trail designation through the area.
Okay.
What that is, I would say that is a future. That is not a critical need at this time.
Okay, you currently have that sequence for 29. Is that part of a grant?
No, we would ask to get a grant for that.
Okay.
So we would ask the Carolina Thread Trail, just like we've got a grant for the section we're in right now, we got a grant from them as well.
Okay.
So we would ask for a grant, but there might be matching.
Well, typically 50%, probably on something like
Yeah,
that.
it's like we asked for 120 this past time, but they only gave us 80. But money's money,
Yeah.
right? We weren't going to, it's great that we got 80. And then we use the pedestrian fund to help offset what the cost was for the project.
I think my concern with the trails and the greenways is the initial cost is expensive, right?
Yes, ma'am.
But then the upkeep.
Residual.
When I'm looking at the Lawson Creek behind mine, I was just saying to Scott today, it is a mess. Right now, there's not a lot of water in it, right? But even when there is, it doesn't move because the tree debris from years of, a lot of rain and the trees falling, and then somehow the balls from the tennis ball court end up in the creek.
Yeah.
And so now that's causing a problem. And we just missed that, Army Corps of Engineers, Lawson missed that cleanup by a date
Yes.
1 or 2 days, or whatever that was.
But we're working on a different grant with no match that will actually help some of Lawson.
Right. So, right, but, so that's now, but, you know, in years to come, how many of these trails and greenways are we, or the taxpayer is going to have to maintain? It's great for connectivity,
Once it becomes
but
formal.
once, yeah.
So-
We have to think, yeah, $250,000 and then a match, okay, we're thinking now, but in 15 years, is there going to be another grant where it's going to clean up that creek, where it's, you know, because now, you know, I pay HOA dues, right? They're not cleaning it, and because it's not,
It's a town
ours.
assigned.
Yeah. So
So-
with the Carolina Thread Trail, when first came on the scene here in Waxhaw, what was charged to me that we would take in just the Carolina Thread Trail designation areas and not these feeders that come into it. And our responsibility as a town is to make sure there's spine trails for people to get to A to B safely. And the feeder trails are up to the HOAs or private organizations to make those happen. And that does not fall under the town. So that's when you're looking at this, you're seeing it as a either the spine trails that get you to A to B, because the Sunny's Way is a whole nother trail system that basically gets you from Marvin all the way to,
Mineral Springs.
no, it gets you to the neighborhood y'all were talking about earlier. Forest Creek. Thank you. And that is a huge undertaking. It would need its own feasibility plan, just like the Trail Mile Creek Greenway plan that we got a grant for, that paid for all that. So we would look for those type things to leverage. But I understand your concern on that.
Yeah, I just feel like, again, if we're breaking it up to needs and wants, and we hear a lot of, you know, and safety, right, with the roads, the things that we need to keep our citizens safe in traffic and mitigating the risk there of
Totally understand.
and safety of the citizens. For me, and I know my neighbor's not going to like this, but
Yeah,
Mr.
you
Jeff
have.
isn't gonna
Yeah,
like
I know
this.
you have a few neighbors over there, but the.
I mean, I'll advocate for them. I just feel like we have a 501c3 that can potentially raise funds to do this with corporations that benefit from our taxpayers, and I think that that's kind of where our focus in that committee should be, is reaching out to the atriums who should be health conscious, and Novants and Lowe's Foods and all these places that our taxpayers use.
Yes, ma'am.
That we should then
The
ask
good
them
in
to
your mind.
contribute in some way to the greenways and those connectivities. For me, right now, in the next 5 years, and looking at how much we are spending on infrastructure and not minimizing the needs to update the parts, but looking at the safety features first and then everything else. Let's just move it out and figure out other ways to fund if we can.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to add just one more too. When looking at deploying trails, when we have key gaps in our sidewalk infrastructure, that's essentially our main modal of transportation after cars, how do we prioritize the trail when we could deploy those resources to fill in some of those pedestrian gaps that we already currently have, that we're working with engineering to address?
So it's actually engineering, planning, and Parks and Rec that actually looks at all that as well. And they're called lily pads. That's what I call them. And basically it's making those connections, right? And we strategically look at that. But honestly, I'm trying to get other people to build them. When developers come in, you all the new development type, you'll see that they're building the greenways and sidewalk system to our specs now. We didn't quite have that back in the day.
Right.
Now we do. There's 2 plans on my desk right now that I'm reviewing for the end of the week. I'm advocating for us on those things, and crosswalks and the beacons, and they're responsible to put them in. So they're helping with that major infrastructure. So we're constantly advocating for that.
Thank you, Dina.
You're welcome.
That was pretty thorough.
Good.
Great feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Thanks, Dina. Appreciate that. Appreciate that, Dina. Thank you. I was also going to tell you that on one of the things that we'll add as a revenue structure under public services when it comes to the police roof is we have a debt service on that right now. We'll probably recommend a one-time use of that to replace the roof and then retire that out after that. That way we can replace that roof with existing monies. In other words, you're already used to paying it, use it, replace it, and then move on. We'll have to build up for the next roof, but that's okay, you know.
With that roof, I'm recalling our retreat, and I recall, is the roof just the roof, or is it part of the HVAC infrastructure that was possibly needed with that roof?
Cannot remember every piece of that, but I can ask.
If you would, please.
Fine, sure.
Thank you, sir.
That's just something I wanted to highlight. But we'll go back, if the board is okay with the list, we'll go back and try to reprioritize and move some things around.
Sounds like we got a lot to incorporate.
Yeah, and come back to that. Also, if it's okay with the board, I think it would be good if we do see some of these things that the Friends could be dealing with. We ought to be thinking about that. If we see things in here that WAA might want to fundraise on, we ought to have a conversation about some of these things. And any other partners that we may have too. Dina pointed out she was being a little shy about it. She does try to make it a point to coordinate and partner with as many groups as possible out there when it comes to lots of things. But I think with the Friends having its 501(c) status now, that's a big help, and they can organize some capital campaign around those things much better now.
I think it's a motivated board to do that. They're very passionate about their trends.
I would agree.
And so I think they'll be great at it. And I think the DWA is another partner. There is overlap there with downtown. So I think that working together, we can partner and maybe take some of this stuff, some of these projects off this list, move them over, not discard them, just move them around until we can figure out how to fund them.
Slide the responsibility over.
I've got a question about, we heard in the past about Nesbit, when it goes underwater, sometimes it could take up to $90,000 to bring sand in and recondition
Yeah, it depends what washes away.
the fields, the spaces in between. Where does that money come from to make those unexpected maintenance issues?
I have a guess, and I can tell you what a probably formal answer is, but Dina?
So, in the past, if it was inside the field, it was the WA's responsibility. With our new agreement, an active guide or an active whatever happens.
25-year rain, 100-year rain.
Yeah. Then the town's responsibility is to help mitigate that resource back.
Right, and so that bucket of money is that an emergency fund? Is that baked into our, to some sort of maintenance plan that's not on this page?
We would allocate existing funds if we're not spending in some places. That's always my first obligation as a budget officer. But if it overwhelms it, that is what your unassigned fund balance is for. So, during a storm, for example, if it's a FEMA level storm, we would be spending out of that, but we would also be tracking and trying to recover back a lot of that, Depends on if there's a declaration or not, those kinds of things. But in that particular case, you know, sometimes if let's say we didn't have a fund balance, it would be, what are you giving up to fix that? Or we're not going to use that anymore, and we're moving on to the next thing. So there are decision points at some point in time. But just to answer your basic question, we would either take it from other funds within the existing structure of that year's allocation budget, or we would advise the board that we might need to draw down some fund balance. That is what your savings account is for. So you're not restricted from that. You're only restricted to the level that you feel comfortable with politically.
Thank you.
Anything else on this issue?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Dina.
Oh, yeah.
Next up then, in that regard,
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
please.
I'm sorry. Just want to state, I've put it in the manager's report. I'm going to do it again this week, and we're going to do it more formally. My recommendation is for a series of special meetings, potentially for a budget. So I put some dates in there for you folks to consider. Number one, a special meeting on 5/5, meaning that we could do a work session and talk more about budget, personnel, and those kinds of things as a sole issue. 5/12 after the regular meeting, if we need to. Now, if you can get through it and you're comfortable, you stop, right? We just hold public hearings and move on and move through the budget. But I'm trying to put enough dates out there for you guys to mark your calendars so that you can have thorough discussions. So 5/5, 5/12. We're going to put the public notice out for the budget on 5/21. And then we're recommending 6/2 as a special meeting for a public hearing just on the budget. And then you can either, if you're comfortable, adopt it by your June meeting, regular meeting, and/or hold budget workshops in between then too. So I'm not letting you know that you don't need those things. I want enough dates on your calendar so you folks can appropriately plan.
So hopefully by 5/5 or 5/12, we can kind of determine whether or not we're feeling the need for.
You feeling the need for anything else? Yep.
Workshops.
Yep. You could go to the public hearing and all heck could break loose, so you never know. Or it could just be angels from on high singing your praises. So, which is always my hope when I do a budget. Hasn't happened in 38 years, but I'm trying. But anyways, 5/5, 5/12, 5/21, and 6/2.
Are all dates in?
All dates. If you will please mark them on your calendars. We will send notices. We will be more formal, but I wanted you.
Notices to sign. And at 6:30 regular time.
Yes, yeah. We're always trying to do your stuff at 6:30. That was very clear by the board. You need that time to get home. You need that time to get off work and everything else. So we're trying to be conscious of that. Thank you. And you have an executive session, I believe, Mr. Mayor.
Special meeting or closed session tonight? All righty then, without further ado then, could I get a motion to recess into closed session pursuant to NCGS 143-318.11A1 and 6 to preserve the attorney-client privilege and consider a personnel matter?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are now in closed session. Wait, I forgot to say all in favor. Can I get a motion to reconvene from closed session?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Daniel Farris was the one who originally made that motion. Barbie? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are now adjourned. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.